Hello, hello. Hope everyone's doing well tonight. Let me turn this down slightly. Well, I may turn it up depending on the video. Hey Linux, how you doing tonight? As it says on the video, we're gonna be doing another YouTube night. I haven't done this probably I think since January. I tried it out then. And last time was focused mostly on analog horror. This time, I'm leaving it a bit more open-ended. There was a whole lot of different videos I kind of wanted to check out. Just anything I thought was cool or weird or just interesting to me in general. So it's gonna be a bit of variety. Good, just grinding away. Right on. Keeping up the Leeds progress. Right on. I'm just gonna probably jump right into the first video. This is by one. Hold on, let me turn my face on. Good one for now. Let's do this. Ta-da. So yeah, first video is by actually one of my favorite YouTubers, Frederick Knudsen. He does a pretty long series of videos known as Down the Rabbit Hole. And he investigates so many different topics. Some internet related, some based on like real historical events. It's quite the range, and all of them are well researched, all interesting in their own right, and all pretty different. You never know what you're getting with him, and that's why I enjoy it so much. I thought I'd start off checking out actually one of his older videos about the SCP Foundation, this site. So, Down the Rabbit Hole is certainly fitting for SCP. Yeah. Let's just jump right in. Put a pause to the music, and close the playlist, and yeah, let's learn about the SCP Foundation.
Down the rabbit hole.
There's actually there's an interesting announcement made about it recently. That's related to what's going to be brought up in this video, so I'll talk about that when it comes to it.
When first opening the SCP Foundation's website, it can be difficult for the reader to shake the feeling they've stumbled upon something they shouldn't have. In the top left is a strange-looking seal, beside which is the motto, Secure, Contain, Protect. In the center of the page are the words, Warning, the Foundation database is classified. Access by unauthorized personnel is strictly prohibited. Perpetrators will be tracked, located, and detained. Though there are many places to go from here, most readers quickly find the SCPs for which the Foundation is named. Thousands of articles are collated into a massive list, each with their own strange names, such as Telepathy Virus, Charity Worms, and The Hateful Star. Clicking on any of these takes the reader to a formal report, which gives an item number and object class.
This is a big one that I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with, SCP-87. There's a fan game specifically about the staircase that got quite popular. Though you'll see there's a few different SCPs that got popular. At least I've seen just generally around the internet.
Special containment procedures, and a description of the object or phenomenon itself. Sometimes these formal reports will have an attached image and addenda as well, and in the top right, a rating is provided. Most of these reports are remarkably disturbing or strange, a feeling aided by how some of the information is censored with black bars and sometimes simply removed with the words redacted or data expunged. Closer inspection reveals that the entirety of the SCP collection is licensed under Creative Commons, meaning that anyone can share or adapt it for any purpose, even commercially. So how exactly did this strange website come to be, and who is behind it?
So I've known about the SCP Foundation probably like when I was in high school, going back, yeah, almost eight, 9 years ago. It was definitely pretty early on in the site's history then. Um, it's still ongoing to this day. I'd also mention. It's come a long way.
Though 4chan is most notorious for its inflammatory user base, there are certain sections that tend toward more constructive activities. One of these is the Paranormal Board, also known as X. This board served and continues to serve as a sort of digital fire pit around which users concoct their own tales of terror and share them with one another, a practice known as creepypasta. The style, quality, and length of this kind of story varies widely, but some of them end up shared around the internet, gaining appreciable popularity. Two of the most
This this one he's referencing to here. I actually didn't know it started on Paranormal. That's interesting. I remember coming across it. There's a Zelda fan site. I'm not even sure if it's still active. ZeldaDungeon.net. I remember just looking up guides when I was playing through the Zelda games as a kid, but occasionally they just have articles about wider Zelda community related things. And when this creepypasta caught on Ben Drowned, this is when I first came across it. And probably one of like the first creepypastas I came across, now that I think about it. Bit of
gaining
interesting
appreciable
history.
popularity. Two of the most popular are Slender Man from the Something Awful forums and the Russian Sleep Experiment from a WordPress blog. Before these
Seen
two
this
even
too.
existed,
Well,
however,
and of course,
there was
Slender
one
Man.
story posted to 4chan's X-board
That was
would
probably
capture
actually the
rampant
first
imaginations
creepypasta I
of
came across.
enthralled readers. Sometime in the summer of 2007, one anonymous user posted his writing to X. It was very short, reading thusly. Security clearance document number SCP-173. Object class, Euclid. Special containment procedures. Item SCP-173 is to be kept in a locked container at all times. When personnel must enter SCP-173's container, no fewer than 3 may enter at any time, and the door is to be re-locked behind them. At all times, 2 persons must maintain direct eye contact with SCP-173 until all personnel have vacated and re-locked the container. Description: moved to Site 19, 1993. Origin is as of yet unknown. It is constructed from concrete and rebar with traces of Krylon brand spray paint. SCP-173 is animate and extremely hostile. The object cannot move while within a direct line of sight. Line of sight must not be broken at any time with SCP-173. Personnel assigned to enter container are instructed to alert one another before blinking. Object is reported to attack by snapping the neck at the base of the skull or by strangulation. In the event of an attack, personnel are to observe Class 4 hazardous object containment procedures. Personnel report sounds of scraping stone originating from within the container when no one is present inside. This is considered normal, and any change in this behavior should be reported to the acting HMCL supervisor on duty. The reddish-brown substance on the floor is a combination of feces and blood. Origin of these materials is unknown. The enclosure must be cleaned on a bi-weekly basis.
One that started it
A
all.
few qualities immediately stood out to the readers. The first was the unique format, which fit well to a textual medium, giving the feeling that one had discovered something
That's actually
forbidden.
interesting. There's nothing redacted in this first statement, too. That's normally a big thing with
The
SCPs.
second was the implication that there was much, much more than just this object. After all, it was labeled number 173. Building
That's
off
some
of
scary
this,
paper
other
mache.
people began posting their own SCP articles, utilizing the same format. One of these was SCP-682, also known as the hard-to-destroy
remember this
reptile,
one.
a creature bent on killing humans that also has the capability to rapidly adapt to anything that may harm it. The containment procedures call for it to be perpetually immersed in a vat of hydrochloric acid to prevent it from regenerating its flesh. As more of these articles were created, a few forum members postulated that the articles should be moved to another website so that they may be preserved and better shared, and the response to this idea was almost universally positive.
I'm actually curious really quickly, too. Was there a date on this original one? You see a screenshot of the post. Okay, this was originally in May 31st, 08. Cool. Just curious. There's an interesting history regarding the photo too. It was someone's art installment that, someone just saw the picture of and wrote the story, like, surrounding it. And I also go into this now. Very recently, so obviously this was first made in 2008, before the site was even created. Since then, geez, have something like over 3,000? No, there's more since then. I think there was 3,000 at the time of this video. Yeah, it was 2016, a while ago. Are these 100? Yeah, these are 1,000 each series. Oh, God, so there's at least over 7,000 now. Or even these later ones in DXJ International. I haven't gone into a deep dive into SCP itself, like the site itself. I've read definitely a lot more of the popular ones, and like I said, the whole reason I first heard about this site was some friends in high school, particularly talking about this one, comparing it, SP-173, comparing it to Doctor Who. Funnily enough, I remember that the Weeping Angels, who have a very similar ability with teleporting when no one's looking at them. Yeah, so very recently, they've just decided. Oh, I think I switched over. What was this? Yeah, they're actually removing this image because, basically it didn't fall under the Creative Commons license that the site is currently under. And up to this point, they never really had permission to actually use that image. It's created by, it goes into it in this post they made, Azumi Kato, just in 2000. Yeah, I think the original picture was called Untitled 2004. Obviously super iconic to, SCP being where it all started. And yeah, they're removing the picture, which is a pretty big announcement since it's so central to the site. I thought it was really interesting. This was just February this year. Yeah, some more interesting development I thought I'd share.
Which fit well to a textual medium, giving the feeling that one had discovered something forbidden. The second was the implication that there was much, much more than just this object. After all, it was labeled number 173. Building off of this, other people began posting their own SCP articles, utilizing the same format. One of these was SCP-682,
Oh, yeah. We already
also
watched all
known
this.
as the Hard to Destroy. 2008, a few users were universally positive.
Yeah, they're gonna make a new site on their own.
On January 19th of 2008, a few users set up a wiki using the website Edit This, where they collected the many dozens of threads that had been created on 4chan and collated them into an unwieldy list. This day marked the first website devoted specifically to the SCP Foundation setting. Certain authors
I think I started going by actual release order at some point. Then I started reading by, there's another section, popularity. So I've read just a few all over the place, but probably less than 100 overall, if I had to guess.
began to make themselves known when the transition was made, most notably a person who worked under the pseudonym Dr. Gears. As more SCPs were written, the style became more concrete, as did certain elements of the fiction. The O5 Leadership Council was cemented as the highest leadership authority, and the practice of utilizing disposable individuals for dangerous tasks became a common theme, eventually taking on the name D-Class. Despite the hundreds of entries that were written over time, the community remained fairly small, partially because of how difficult it was for them to communicate with one another. Though they managed to maintain relative decorum despite this, there was one issue that couldn't be avoided: the pressure of limited space. So, the community moved to another website, Wikidot, where all of the articles from Edit This were copied. Now, the users had access to forums where authors and enthusiasts could discuss SCP-related subjects and share ideas while providing feedback on one another's articles. This was also when the first elements of leadership began to manifest, all working under pseudonyms and for no personal profit. The first three administrators were Dr. Gears, Fritz Willy, and Kane Pathos Crow. Though there were technically 4 administrator accounts, 2 of them were
This is the true face of SCP.
secretly the same person. Fritz Willy had anonymously created the new Wikidot site under the name The Administrator before creating his own personal account due to the fear that the creator of the site would receive favoritism. This decision helped set the positive ethical standard for the SCP Foundation, which would become a core part of its culture for years to come. Though the SCP community was still very small, there were enough people that the general quality had begun to decline, since many would simply post their SCPs without receiving feedback. Mary Sue's and self-inserts abounded, and a playful attitude had come to characterize new entries. Kane Pathos Crow described how the atmosphere of the Foundation had changed over time. The Foundation itself is no longer this great shadow that looms over the horizon, too huge and far-reaching to truly see. It has become a pet, something that allows itself to be tamed and groomed. Dr. Gears diagnosed the issue with dramatic flair. As we add, we destroy. With every entry, it peels away the horror more and more. Some entries add and even enhance the feel of the first entry. However, many more tear it down. Along with this diagnosis, he offered a threefold treatment. 1. Massive deletions. We have a ton of SCP items and we could trim over 1/4 of them with no issue. No decommission, no please edit pleading, just gone. Free the number for someone else. 2. Stricter edits. If people ask you again and again to edit your work and you do nothing, be prepared to lose your article. If you don't want to be productive, we have other people who are. If your only response is, okay,
on this
you fix
post
it
too?
then be prepared to lose
Didn't
your
look like there
article to
was.
the editor.
I'm just
If you make a
curious
steaming
how
pile
far
of
along this
crap
was.
and someone edited it into solid gold, then they should get the credit, not you. 3. Banning. If you are consistently a jerk / uncooperative / stupid / horrible at writing, we
Jeez.
do not want you. If your SCP keeps getting downvoted or deleted, maybe you should be doing something else. Instead of constantly cleaning up after bad users, remove the source of the issue. He concluded by stating, "In short, we need to start acting more like the Foundation, a soulless, shadowy, bureaucratic entity with zero tolerance for mistakes, incompetence, or insubordination.
Well,
One
that's how they decided to model the site after.
whose actions are carried out swiftly and without apology or explanation."
Harsh but fair.
This plan,
Indeed.
however, could only be enacted to a certain degree due to how few administrators and moderators there were, and the body of people to promote was small compared to the amount of work flooding into
I know my friends back in high school they definitely posted to the forums. I don't know if I think they tried to submit some stories of their own. I'm not sure if any ever made the cut or like how hard it was at that point, because that's why I was curious about if there was a date here. You know, I'm sure if you were early enough in the site's history, I don't think they were, maybe it would have been easier to, occupy an entry.
the wiki. Stories of wild fancy and wonder proliferated during this time, and many more fiction tales were created. Most notable of these was the Wanderlust series, written by a figure under the name The Fishmonger, who would eventually become one of the most divisive members of the community. Not everybody was happy with this name,
I
The
remember
Fishmonger.
hearing about this, Kane and Alice. I don't know if I've read. I think I remember the Fishmonger. I don't know if I've read any entries relating to him.
Who would eventually become one of the most divisive members of the community. Not everybody was happy with this lighter direction, and a majority of the members pined for a return to the more Lovecraftian rhetoric that had originally characterized the Foundation, couched in plausible science. Dissent entered into the administration of the Foundation Wiki. Members began manipulating the rating system in order to protest certain actions rather than police the quality of articles, and one moderator in particular, under the name Dr. Kondraki, began acting out by abusing his moderator privileges. Many of the higher-tier writers who had enjoyed the atmosphere left the site, further reducing the average quality of articles. The timing for this schism could hardly have been worse, as the one person with ultimate power over the site, Fritz Willy, aka the administrator, had been missing for some time. If the SCP Foundation was to survive, severe and swift action would have to be taken. The other moderators and admins demoted Dr. Kondraki and issued him a 24-hour ban. When he returned to the wiki only to collect and publish personal details of another user out of spite, he received a permanent ban. To deal with the low-quality articles, the moderators enacted the mass
Foundation.
edit, where they began systematically sifting through them and manually deleting them, purging large swaths of content with the only community feedback being the page's rating. After contacting the owners of the Wikidot site, the administration was able to move site ownership privileges to an active user, allowing for complete control once again. Though a small contingent of users were frustrated about their articles being deleted despite technically having a positive rating, the actions were received well by the community. But none of these actions could compare with the difficulty of the decision they had to make only 2 months after the mass edit. The Fishmonger had been one of the most popular writers for the Foundation for some time, excelling in stories that fit with the older, more carefree tone of the Foundation, and he had become one of its centerpieces. After the mass edit in February of 2010, the Fishmonger published a story on the website, which was downvoted by one of the other senior staffers, Poor Yorick. He included the comment, "I just find the idea of a Keter-class SCP becoming something intentionally cute within canon anathemic to my view of the site." Side note, in the fiction, Keter-class SCPs are the most dangerous kind commonly found, typically meaning that the Foundation is actively attempting to destroy them or contain them permanently due to the threat they pose to humanity. The class beneath that is Euclid, which means the object or phenomenon is actively harmful and dangerous. The lowest class is safe, meaning that as long as the object sees no interaction, it is of no harm. Incensed by this criticism, the Fishmonger replied by saying, quote, "Yorick, your girlfriend told you to vote this down and you're not going to pull any horseshit over on me, so just come out and say it already." He went on to say that, "You don't like it? Fine, vote however you like, but I don't want to hear any more goddamn, 'Hey Fish, when are you going to finish X?' because the answer is immediately after you get done kissing my ass." He also called Poor Yorick a little goddamn pussy-whipped bitch, and that he, quote, "made an enemy today." The moderators and admins had tolerated the Fishmonger's rude attitude before, but for many, this was crossing a line. A thread was created about disciplining the Fishmonger, where they began to discuss their next
That's why I haven't read his stories.
Snorlison writes, quote, "Fishmonger has often gotten a pass on behavior because of his contributions as an author. The fact that he brought this up in the inflammatory actions indicates he is aware of this special status, and this is most definitely not the first time he has actively used it." Dr. Gears put it more poetically. "Fish is a foul-mouthed, wretched, petty man who breathes cruelty and shits suffering. That being said, he is one of the best writers we have, and therefore we have dealt with this rubbish continuously for some time. Much like an atomic scientist who insists on having hookers for assistants, we have complied with his eccentricities due to the demand for his work." After some indecision, they decided to issue him a temporary ban, and when he returned, they informed him that a close eye would be taken to his actions. He responded with dramatic fervor. He said, "You'll find I respond poorly to threats." At this point, the subject of a permanent ban was raised, and the idea was seen favorably. Dr. Clef said, "I'm a site admin and I have this authority, I am damn well using it." The Fishmonger, with characteristic flair, responded with an ultimatum. "Since the decision has been made that having my writing is not worth putting up with my dramatics, then you shall have neither. Effective immediately, I formally request that all original material I have submitted to the SCP Foundation Wiki be permanently removed. If this material is not removed within 2 weeks, I will not contact you further. Legal summons will be sent via my lawyer, Donald B. Spear, to Wikidot and their hosting server, GoDaddy, pursuant to Section 512 to Title 19 of the United States Code." Though all writing on the Foundation website is published under Creative Commons, and therefore has little legal ground for removal, it was and continues to be site policy to remove content when the author requests it. Thus, the moderators made the call to have his work expunged from the site, even though it meant gouging out a sizable hole in the canon of the Foundation. The Fishmonger seemed to believe that there would be a massive outcry, and many of the moderators thought similarly. Some wondered if the site would then begin to peter out.
See, I haven't seen this video in a while. I forgot how I forgot how focused it was on the drama in the beginning, but still, this is pretty entertaining.
These fears, however, never came to fruition. Rather than signaling the end, it marked a transition for the Foundation. With the removal of the fishmonger's works, much of the final remnants of the old style of Foundation writing had been purged, and the grimmer style took hold. Support for the fishmonger had evaporated after his spiteful demand to have his work removed from the site, and the user base seemed more ready than ever to forge ahead into the terror-laden future. The rules and mechanics of the site were further perfected, and the tight quality control meant that more and more well-written articles and stories were being created. A number of free independent games were created about SCP-087, aka the Stairwell, and eventually one was released featuring SCP-173, the statue, as the core hazard. As popular YouTubers found and played these games in their videos, more and more fascinated people were lured to the Foundation's site. As time wore on, moderators and admins would come and go, and there would be disagreements with how to handle the massive influx of people and the problems they caused, but none of these issues were insurmountable. Guides were created for new aspiring SCP writers and refined.
Yeah, at the time of this video, there was still only 3,000, so what, it's tripled since then?
Refinement of existing content continues, even today. Now, there are thousands of articles and stories awaiting readers willing to plumb the depths of the Foundation, and there is little sign that this unconventional horror juggernaut is stopping.
Well, there it is. Meta-narrative behind SCP is quite interesting. Yeah, I agree. Like I said, I forgot how focused it was more on this, but, I don't know. Frederick Knudsen himself streams, actually VTubes too. I think just on the previews. Yeah. He's like done videos, streams, I should say, on different like SCP readings and whatnot. Like he's definitely a big fan of the actual stories themselves too, though this mostly focused on the meta-narrative, like you said, Linux. And it's, yeah, interesting in its own right. I just haven't watched this in a while and forgot that that was mostly what it was focused on. So, I don't know. That was cool. Definitely check out Frederick Knudsen Down the Rabbit Hole if you haven't already. All his videos are amazing, like I've said. And, yeah, he VTubes and streams too, so check that out. A lot of the stuff he streams is, like he said, stuff he normally wouldn't do a full video on, but he'd love to he just sort of explores in a short stream. Yeah. Okay, actually speaking of Frederick too, he actually makes an appearance in this next series, which I haven't watched all of, but I thought it could be interesting to check out. And yeah, I guess we'll just jump right into it.
You've gotta be kidding! A game for kids and grown-ups. What's the problem, Arthur?
I think I'm old enough to bathe on my own now, but my mom insists on getting in the tub with me every time. It makes me feel uncomfortable. What should I do?
Here's a tip. The answer may not be obvious at first.
Everyone has a right to privacy. Try being more firm with your mother about your refusal.
Parents know best. You should do as you're told at all times.
I'll take your place, Arthur.
Oh my god.
Gotta be kidding! A game for kids and grown-ups. What's the problem, Arthur?
Bathed with my mother, and now they're sleeping together too. It's making my dad mad and uncomfortable. So what should I do?
The tip. I am so fucking mad.
Everyone has a right to sleeping with your mother. I'm sorry that it makes you uncomfortable.
This sounds like an issue that you should arrange a serious discussion with your mother about.
Nobody said you can't join us, Arthur.
Jesus Christ.
You've gotta be kidding! A game for kids and grown-ups. What's the problem, Arthur?
I had a conversation with my mom. It looks like Binky is my dad now. I don't understand. I I feel confused and upset. What should I do?
You should go to bed, son.
Arthur, I appreciate you're troubled, but I'm out of advice.
It's okay, Arthur. Binky is my father, too.
Help me.
Something. Yeah, there's 2 more. This third one has Frederick in it, which is hilarious too.
You've got to be kidding! A game
Good
for
job.
kids and grown-ups. What's the problem, Buster?
I'm angry that Binky stole my mummy joke for a project about Egypt. Now what should I do?
Here's a tip. You are not going to feel better.
Imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. You should let him have the joke.
Get over it. It's just a joke.
He will take more than just your joke, Buster.
Did they get a different voice actor for Arthur? Or maybe he just got a better
You've got
mic.
to be kidding! A game for kids and grown-ups. What's the problem, Buster?
I think my identity is being stolen. I noticed many fraudulent purchases on my credit card. I don't remember making these purchases. Should I contact the authorities?
Here's the tip. The authorities can't help you now.
Buster, you should be more careful with how you spend your money.
Get over it. It's just a joke.
You have to get out of here, Buster.
You've got to be Binky! A game for kids and grown-ups. What's the problem, Binky?
Don't worry. There is no problem. Not anymore.
Here's a tip. What have you done?
That's great, Binky. I'm glad to hear it.
Oh, hi, Binky. When did you get here?
Jesus. Okay. This is the only one I've actually seen. And this was released just the other day and was recommended to me after watching Down the Rabbit Hole. For what will soon be obvious reasons.
A game for kids and grown-ups. What's the problem, Brain?
DW keeps making up stories about a monster in
Fred.
Elwood City and is acting irrational. Should I correct DW and tell her that monsters aren't real?
Here's a tip. He took everything from me.
Never miss a teaching moment. Correct her while she's still young and tell her not to spread falsehoods.
You would be surprised as how powerful knowledge is. Take a trip to the library and tell me what you can find.
You should mind your own business, Brain. You'll live longer that way.
Vaguely. Oh, there's Binky.
You've got to be kidding. A game for kids and grown-ups. What's the problem, Brain?
DW insists that she isn't lying and that it's too late for us. I don't know what she means by this. Should we be concerned?
Here's a tip. Yes!
What DW needs is more homework. I'll make sure her teacher knows this.
Oh, Brain, it's not too late for us. This is the beginning. DW will see.
You're making a mistake, Brain. A big mistake.
You should have listened to Muffy Allen.
You've got to be kidding. Alan is no more. What's the problem, Brain?
Oh no.
Here's a tip. Just for you, Alan. You've sealed your fate. This world is coming to an end, the way it should end. But I have something else planned for you, Alan. Something far more worse.
Don't be sad, Brain. This is how it's supposed to be.
Hello? Hello?
Hello? God. Well, I'm glad to see that people are still continuing on Arthur's legacy after it finished. After just seeing that one, I thought this was maybe like more of an analog horror story sort of thing, but the first two are more just Mimi more than anything, which
You've got to be kidding! A game for...
I don't know, was still pretty funny, but yeah, that was just a very short trio of videos, the last of which just came out, right? Yeah, 6 March. Last week I ran into it. Yep. Cool to see Fred featured in that too. I do have Birthplace's video here. I let him know I was gonna be streaming Monday. I don't know if he's here now. Maybe if he pops in later. I'll go over his video for now. Just wouldn't mind him being here so he can see my reaction or whatever, but we'll see if he pops by in a bit. The next video I have after that is actually by one of my friend's girlfriend. She does videos sort of similar to Down the Rabbit Hole and this other series, Atrocity Guide, I both like. Just sort of interesting, I guess, rabbit hole type obscure history, I guess you'd call it. Interesting shit. I don't know how to exactly categorize it, but yeah, she's put out a good number of videos. Hasn't posted one in a while. I'm hoping she'll continue it sometime soon, but just thought I'd share this one. It's a big fan.
Please be advised, this video contains references to suicide. I'd like to note before we begin that I mean no disrespect to Connie or any of her family members by making this video. I simply want to tell her story. Have you ever wondered what it would be like if you just packed your bags and abandoned your current life in search of a fresh start? Regardless of if you're content with your life, or if you feel disappointed with where you're at, I feel like many of us feel some yearning to know how different life could be should we completely alter our paths. In today's video, we focus on Connie Converse, a singer-songwriter mostly active from the 1950s to 1960s, who chose to do just that, disappear without a trace with the intention of starting a new life. Connie Converse was born as Elizabeth Eaton Converse in New Hampshire in 1924. As a child, she absolutely hated being referred to as Elizabeth or any nicknames associated with it, like Liz or Beth, and sought a new name to be referred to as. Her brother Philip Converse usually just called her Sis. She reportedly grew up in a rather strictly religious family, and her father was a Baptist minister. Her brother Philip described her as a genius and a polymath, and she shared her inquisitive and creative mind with him. He fondly recalls the intellectual pastimes and projects that they engaged in as children, such as quizzing each other on world history, reading Shakespeare plays, and inventing new games. Looking back, Philip says that he feels that he learned more culture at her knees than I ever learned in real school. Describing their childhood, he said, "In a very real sense, Sis raised me. I always wince at mentioning this truth because it sounds as though our mutual parents were on leave for that decade or two. In fact, they were very much there and loving, as well as interesting fonts of intellectual stimulation for the young in their own right." Connie's creativity as a child seemed endless. She loved painting, drawing cartoons, sculpting, and writing stories, plays, and poems. She also went on to teach herself to play the guitar and the piano. She excelled not only in the arts, but also in her classes at school. She was the valedictorian of her graduating class in high school, and she received 8 of about a dozen additional academic awards during her graduation ceremony. Remembering this night, Philip said that Connie had won so many of the available awards, the audience began to get noisier and noisier, with more groans being audible with each honor she was awarded. In the end, rather than feeling proud, her parents felt almost embarrassed and were left thinking that the school should have tried to distribute the awards more fairly between the students. Being such a gifted student, Connie was also awarded a full scholarship to attend Mount Holyoke College in Massachusetts. Her family had a history at the school, as her mother and grandmother had both attended the college. It was here that her friends nicknamed her Connie. She found this preferable to her given name, and the moniker stuck as she eventually began introducing herself to people as Connie. In her first year at Mount Holyoke College, she continued her stellar academic record as expected, being the recipient of several academic awards and forming close bonds with members of the faculty who became familiar with her work. However, she completely shocked her friends, teachers, and family when she dropped out of college at the end of her second year. Her parents were said to be shattered by this, and her brother Philip said that he was perplexed but felt a sense that whatever his sister decided for herself was the right option. This particularly devastated her parents as they felt she was going against their strict rules in raising her. She was in full rebellion mode against a family that played no cards, drank nothing, and so on, her brother said. Connie decided to move to New York
I love
City,
how
and she
close
took
her
up
and
the
her brother
position of
was.
junior
Like,
editorial
even
help
after
at
leaving school
Institute
there,
for Pacific
her parents
Studies.
were upset at her brother.
In full rebellion mode against this particular,
What did he say
and her
specifically?
brother Philip said that he was perplexed but felt a sense that whatever his sister decided for herself was the right option.
Love that.
This particular help at Institute for Pacific Studies. Her brother notes that she was there when the world tumbled down politically and that she was somehow burned in the general meltdown and retreated in due time to a less visible or vulnerable job
Just
in a
this one I
printing.
skipped. And I skipped.
Connie
What
decided
was
to
this
move
reason?
to New York City, and she took up the position of junior
New York City,
editorial
okay.
help at Institute for Pacific Studies. Her brother notes that she was there when the world tumbled down politically and that she was somehow burned in the general meltdown and retreated in due time to a less visible or vulnerable job in a printing house. She began working at the Academy Photo Offset Printing House and joined the Printers Union. This is the point when Connie began writing and performing her own music. She was immediately impassioned with songwriting, with her brother even saying that she composed because she had to, for personal delight and expression. Delighted with her new means of expressing herself, she leapt into writing and producing songs, and eventually had 40 songs within her body of work. This included setting her favorite poems to music, original love songs, and feminist anthems. Even while she was working for the printing firm, Connie dreamed of a career as a musician. Her music is often described in terms like haunting, beautiful songs with a poetic honesty and melodic sophistication. Her songs were markedly different from the other folk songs popular at the time, and they left a lasting impression on listeners. One person in particular who found himself entranced by her music was Gene Deitch, an illustrator who was also the director of Tom and Jerry.
Oh, damn.
When he first listened to her song One by One, he said it went straight to his heart. There were many better singers than Connie, he said, but few were as intelligent or literate or beautiful. Her songs still haunt me.
In between two tall mountains, there's a place they call Lonesome.
In 1954, she recorded several songs at Gene's home, and he helped Connie land a public performance on the morning show on CBS, which was her only public performance to our knowledge. In 1956, she recorded an album for her brother Phil that was titled Musics, Volumes 1 and 2.
When
It was
was this?
around an album for her
1966?
brother Phil that college. In 1956, she recorded
56,
an album
okay.
for her brother Phil that was titled Musics, Volumes 1 and 2. It was around this time that Connie began to drink and smoke, which her parents considered the final straw in her rebellion. They refused to support her music career, including choosing not to watch her performance on the morning show. Their rejection was so strong that Connie's father passed away without ever hearing her music.
Live on the
She
morning
remained
show.
hopeful for some time, continuing to record new
Your parents
songs
won't
and
watch
promote
it.
them to managers and agents with the full support and aid of her friends. Sadly, her dreams did not come to fruition as she never received a recording contract or any further widespread attention, even after her performance on television. We tried our best, says Deitch, but we just couldn't sell her. In 1961, Connie began to lose hope. She moved to Ann Arbor and began working a secretary job at the University of Michigan, where her brother Phil was a professor. She became a managing editor and writer of the Journal of Self-Reflection in 1963. At this point, music became less of a passion and more of an occasional hobby, and she slowly stopped writing and recording any new songs. Her brother Phil thinks
Damn
that
it.
the realization that she was never going to be a famous musician hurt Connie deeply, and her nephew Tim said that his general sense was that she was a sad person and depressed in ways that I didn't understand at the time. Connie remained dissatisfied with the course her life was running. She worked in her editorial position for about 10 years and seemed to only grow more and more frustrated and dejected. She rarely spoke to any of the friends she made during the time she was living in New York City, and her current colleagues grew progressively worried about the poor state of her mental health. They raised money to send Connie on a trip to London for 6 to 8 months. When she returned, she acknowledged that the trip had been fun for her, but ultimately it didn't have much of an effect on her increasingly depressive state. Then things somehow got even worse for Connie. She was surprised with the bad news that the journal she worked at was shut down in 1972 when the offices were moved to Yale. Shortly afterwards, her mother convinced her to go on a trip with her to Alaska, which Connie was very reluctant about. She eventually agreed to go on the trip, and she returned feeling even worse. Her brother remembers that her mother began
Alaska.
planning another trip shortly after they returned, which is
Well, I've
something
never
he
been to
believes.
Alaska. I can't exactly shit on it, but it doesn't exactly sound like a place that would cheer you up very snowy and desolate. But what do I know?
Pushed the already burnt out Connie over the edge. As if this wasn't enough, Connie then found out that she would need a hysterectomy. Having her uterus removed meant that Connie would never be able to give birth to her own
Alaska
children.
is beautiful.
This devastated her because she absolutely loved children. As a side note, not much is known about Connie's personal life as she was a notoriously private person.
Yes.
But both her brother...
I don't know. It would really depend on the person, I guess. I mean... I'm not one into, like, I'm not one to, like, camping or even, like... I guess just not nature in general, so... I would not be similarly thrilled to go on, like, a trip to Alaska for something like that. At least personally, but... There definitely is... I'm sure it's beautiful. Like, even... I don't know, she showed a shot earlier. It's a beautiful place, but... I don't know. I think her mom didn't really know her that well, at least. From what I can read from it. Maybe I'm reading too much into it. Summers are like 22 hours of sunlight if you're up north enough. Oh my god. As cheery as you can get. That much sunlight is torturous to a point. Oh, there's actually... God. What's the movie called? It was, Insomnia, was it? Curious now. Yes, it was Insomnia. Was this in actually Alaska? Christopher Nolan movie I remember really liking. With Al Pacino. And again, the guy has insomnia and it's light time, like you said, 22 hours a day, so he can never sleep. Again, that much sunlight isn't always a good thing. It wasn't Alaska. Wait, Night Mute, Alaska. Yeah, good movie, by the way. Highly recommend. Classic. Christopher Nolan type thriller.
Pushed the already burnt out Connie over the edge. As if this wasn't enough, Connie then found out that she would need a hysterectomy. Having her uterus removed meant that Connie would never be able to give birth to her own children. This devastated her because she absolutely loved children. As a side note, not much is known about Connie's personal life as she was a notoriously private person, but both her brother Phil and her friend Jean have speculated that she may have been a lesbian. Her nephew Tim and brother Phil have also mentioned that they never met or knew of Connie having a romantic relationship with either a man or a woman. Regardless of her sexual orientation, knowing that you are about to have that option taken away from you is heartbreaking, and this further worsened Connie's depression. In 1974, Connie's brother invited her to join a family vacation to their cottage on Lake Michigan, but she declined. She spent the summer packing away some of her things into her brother's attic and moving others into her Volkswagen Beetle. Items left behind included a filing cabinet where Connie collected and stored her rejection letters from various agents and music publishers. At this time, she wrote numerous letters to friends and family. These letters mentioned her dissatisfaction with her life and her deteriorating mental state and depression. She stated that she was going to head west and take another shot at a new life. In one letter from August of 1974 that Connie had addressed to anyone who ever asks, she wrote, "To survive it all, I expect I must drift back down through the other half of the 20th, which I already know pretty well, the 100th, which I have only read and heard about. I might survive there quite a few years. Who knows?" Before her letters were even delivered to the recipients, Connie had driven off and there have been no confirmed sightings of her since. She was 50 years old. Neither her car nor her body have
50
ever
years
been
old,
found.
too, to
Her
restart
family
your
and
life
friends
like
believe
that.
that her letters may have hinted towards suicide rather than reinventing herself, but no one can be sure. A few years after her disappearance, her brother Phil heard that someone living in Kansas City or Oklahoma had seen the name Elizabeth Converse in a local phone book. Phil never reached out to follow this potential lead. He explained his choice by saying, "Leaving was her choice, and I would be embarrassed to show up on her doorstep and say, 'Hey, what's going on?' I know it might sound ghastly, but that's how I felt." This might sound quite shocking to some people. Choosing to simply never look into the disappearance of a beloved family member may seem unfathomable. But Phil's reasoning helps put his choice into perspective. He remembers back to his childhood when a close friend of Connie's committed suicide, and it shocked many of the residents of their town who were angry and judgmental towards the girl. Connie felt very differently and believed that it was a private matter that shouldn't be treated like gossip. In an interview, Phil said, "I remember her saying that the decision to take one's own life was very personal. She very much believed, even back then, that if anything should be left up to a person, it was whether or not to live." About 10 years after she was last seen, Phil did hire a private investigator to look into Connie's disappearance. The search did not go far, with the private investigator saying, "Look, I might well find your sister, but you need to know that if I find her, that doesn't mean she's coming back. It doesn't even mean that she'll talk to you. If I find her and she doesn't want to know about it, then I can't tell you about it. It's her right to disappear." Phil and the rest of the family agreed, concluding that it was only respectful to Connie to let her be. Phil suspects that she may have driven off a bridge, which could explain why her body and car have never been found, but no one can be sure of her fate. Her disappearance is just one of the many personal things in her life that she kept to herself. While Connie's current whereabouts are unknown, her story does not end there. In 2004, Deitch broadcasted his scratchy recording of her song One by One when he was a guest on the radio show Spinning on Air. David Herman and Dan DeZula heard this broadcast and felt drawn to both her music and the mystery surrounding her. David said, "What makes her music so haunting and ephemeral is to know that it could have easily been lost forever. It was bizarre to think that this person who lived in New York for 10 years and wrote all these great songs could be completely forgotten. To think that people can exist, yet if no one continues to remember them, after a certain period of time, it's like they never existed at all." In her will, Connie handed the rights to her music over to her brother Phil, who was ecstatic to know that her songs would not be lost to time. He said, "I'd been so depressed at the possibility that Connie's songs would disappear from the face of the earth." Dan and David founded Squirrel Thing Records, which they named after a lyric from one of Connie's songs. In 2009, her album How Sad, How Lovely was released. David describes her music by saying, "Her voice is really compelling. Add to that the fact that this was a woman writing singer-songwriter style music in the mid-50s, before being a singer-songwriter was a thing, and before a female songwriter was something people were used to."
It being in the 50s,
David and Dan
too.
also
She
made an
was-
attempt to find out what happened to Connie,
She
but
was
there
like
were
before
still
her
no
time.
leads. They also seem to have made peace with this, with Dan saying, "I've accepted that we'll never know what happened to Connie or whether or not she's still alive. In a way, our work is done. Twice as many people have heard her music than when she recorded it, and the album isn't even out yet. In that respect, Connie Converse is very much alive." Squirrel Thing Records closed in 2019, but you can still purchase Connie's music by going to www.connieconverse.com. Her EP, Sad Lady, was released June 26th of 2020. We will likely never know what happened to Connie. Usually it's frustrating to conclude that we'll never get an answer to something, especially something as mysterious and sad as a missing person. But in this case, it may be for the best that Connie is allowed to disappear in peace, just as she wished, leaving behind only memories and her heart-wrenching yet beautiful music.
How lovely, how
All right. I'm
Thank you.
sorry if there was a bit of an emotional whiplash there. I forgot how somber that was, but oh, man. This also, let me just say, this was also the second video? Yeah, the second video she's put out. I was absolutely blown away with this. I still am watching it again now. She's done such a good job on it. It's such a sad story, but I think she captured it really well, and it's something that's obviously pretty obscure. Like I've never heard of it before, and it's honestly like so moving, so beautiful. Even hearing her recordings now, her relationship with her brother, just there's something near the end too where he didn't end up going after her. Like it's so little, but it really says a lot about the relationship. And again, I think she captured it really well and presented this all amazingly for a second video too. So if you're watching this, Brittany, I hope you return to the series soon, because I was and still am blown away by it. And yeah, I hope if any of you are interested, you check out Strange Soup yourself. This one was definitely one of the more bleaker ones. Her later ones are definitely a lot more varied and not quite as heavy as that one. Some of them are obviously darker and whatnot. They're all great. Just like and subscribe. Yeah. All right. That was Strange Soup. Another one I want to check out after this is, again, in a similar vein, Down the Rabbit Hole and Strange Soup here. This one is made by Atrocity Guide. It's the story of Eulalia, I believe is how you pronounce
Animated
it.
examples Nick made.
Oh, I watched it beforehand. Let's start again from the beginning.
The internet is full of unique people who have put their personality on display for potentially millions of spectators. Some are celebrated, some are mocked and even hated. Some have a certain wholesome charm that make them unique. Some have experienced the whole spectrum of public opinion that make them unique.
This guy, he's the my sadness is immeasurable and my day is ruined. That's literally all I know him from.
Some have experienced the whole spectrum of public opinion. But one individual who rose to internet fame in the early 2010s serves as an example where the initial exposure was so peculiar that many didn't know how to interpret it.
But there's another unusual thing. You're probably wondering, what is this here all about? This seems a bit odd.
But as the internet grew to know this person, his creativity and outsider thinking, what was once mocked began to be respected, admired, and even considered inspirational.
Originally, I had the range spaced 1/8 of a scaling unit, all the way out to 2 scaling units.
Audio is a bit crackly, but I think that's just because his recording in this original video.
This is the story of Nick Smith, also known as Eulalia.
At first glance, it seems rather on the unusual side.
The story of Eulalia began in the early 2000s, when the satirical site Something Awful was one of the most popular online forums.
I love, I don't know, videos exploring the history of this, of like the internet too, during the early 2000s, because it's something I caught the very tail end, like growing up. There's actually another YouTuber, another series. She doesn't really have one series, but Hazel. She's done a bunch of stuff. A lot of stuff relating to late 90s, early 2000s anime in particular. But her one video, it was a bit longer to include in the video, goes over very similar like early 2000s fan sites, video games and animes, is also really great. And I'd recommend checking out both this and her work as a whole. So just thought I'd give a shout out to that, even though most of her videos are a bit longer and I didn't include them in today's playlist. Maybe in the future, we'll see. May check her out another time. Anyways, back to this.
Serving as the breeding ground for some of the internet's earliest memes and inside jokes. Often, forum members would discover an obscure website deep within the internet, which might include potentially bizarre or comedic content, and these forums would discuss and analyze them in the irreverent way they became known for. In December 2001, a thread popped up centered around a troubled high school student who went by the unique name of Eulalia, although his real name was Nick.
I will say, too, something awesome is particularly interesting. I believe it's also where Toby Fox began first posting his works, and I want to say Notch first posted like the first version of Minecraft on the forum. I'm not sure about that second one. I think these were like privated or later documented, and I'm pretty sure his first prototype for Minecraft. Notch was definitely active on Something Awesome. I may be confused about the Minecraft one now that I think about it. that he posted it on there. Further citation needed.
His website, an early internet Angel Fire blog, not unlike what many similarly aged kids of the early 2000s were creating, featured the writings of an alienated young man who was clearly retreating into his own fantasy reality in order to cope with problems of fitting in. I'm currently in 11th grade, his About Me section read. I have over 60 bullies and no friends. These bullies actually give me some valuable rewards. I have a massive defense value that is more than 50% above average. I've taken so much damage and recovered so often that my defense raised in exchange to being more resistant. I absorb insults. All insults have a positive effect on me. The worse the insult, the better the effect. The Something Awful forums had their own particular code of conduct that some may have seen as chaotic, and many of the initial responses to Nick were that of ridicule. Posters mocked him, some even spammed his guest book with obscene pictures. However, as more of Ella Lilia's webpage was brought into the discussion, the tone pivoted. What this individual lacked in the ability to connect with people his own age, he was clearly able to replace with incredible quantitative reasoning, imagination, and creativity. In a page titled My Color System, Nick provided an in-depth explanation of how he saw colors in hexadecimal format, factoring in luminosity and distance, even how to adjust for environmental factors such as fog, complete with animated examples Nick made himself. An overview for something Nick dubbed his status system was laid out on a different page. Using his proclivity for numbers and his interest in video game character statistics, Nick had found a way to break down each attribute in his life he wished to improve upon, be it short story writing, his reading comprehension for the novels he was assigned in class, to even doing the dishes, in mathematical formulas which he used to measure
What was that last one? Hate doing something, for example, putting dishes away. Compatibility of O3 for that. It's nearly impossible to get started. You'll have to force yourself to just to do so. Actually, you don't have to. If you like games like I do, try to make a game of it. If you like numbers like I do, try doing it as you counted or was keeping track of something using numbers. I really like what he said about the bullies too. Like, over time, he like put such a weird positive spin on it, and that describes a lot of like
all
his
insults
thoughts
have a
on it.
positive effect on me. The worse the insult, the better the effect.
Yeah. There's like weird justifications you can like sort of understand the logic behind, but like just a really fascinating, creative way to look at these things.
Assigned in class, to even doing the dishes, in mathematical formulas which he used to measure progress. Everything
And obviously he's just all this math stuff being thrown out. Jesus.
To measure progress.
The same thing you do. Blah, blah, blah.
Everything he did would grant him experience points, as if he were a role-playing game character leveling up in a variety of skills. Nick had essentially figured out a way to gamify his life. On another page, Nick detailed something called his mind game,
Gamifying of
which
everything.
was an ongoing open-world experience he played purely in his imagination. Illustrations of all of its menus, character parties, and controls were provided. And according to this write-up on Forces of Geek, his tendency to slip into his mind game at unpredictable points throughout the day is why he chose to postpone obtaining his driver's license. A dream journal, organized into categories and often accompanied by Nick's own animations, was listed on another page, along with some calculus to explain the dream physics in numeric representations of what he called the fun factor and scary factor of each dream. Nick had even begun making a video game based on his dreams, a 2D physics-based platformer called the Supernatural Olympics.
This is 800 mile an hour, and if you think this is fast, of which you can't go any faster in this version, try Insta-Teleport, 9,000 mile an hour.
There was no denying Nick was excited.
This is so insane too because it was back in 2001, like in some of his original forum posts. I don't even know.
Members would discover.
Yeah, going back to 2001, like indie game development wasn't a thing. They didn't have all these toolkits and everything. Obviously, the internet wasn't even a thing like we knew it. for him to have done this like so early on in internet's history is also fascinating to me.
1 hour.
There was no denying Nick was exceptional, although the unique way his mind worked didn't come without its disadvantages. He'd restricted his diet to a handful of unhealthy foods, such as cheese pizza. He had a self-admittedly irrational fear of blue water, due to its causing death for many of the early video game characters of Nick's childhood. And this was far from being his only irrational phobia. His fear of mirrors led him to make this diagram of a department store, color-coded with danger areas where walking through the sightline of a mirror couldn't be avoided, outlining a strategic path Nick would take in order to pick up the items he needed.
Or if I'm pausing, no, it's fine. I'm giving commentary on this. This is so... I guess there's nothing preventing this from, like, also being on the internet of today, but, like, the whole idea of having your own site, and, well, particularly the way he used this to, like, journal his thoughts is just... It was something not possible, like, really, before the internet, and, in a way, at least, something like this. Something like it's being shown in this video, and obviously that was on his site. It's... I don't even know where I'm going with this point. I feel like it's something that can only could have existed on the internet at this time. At least I think. I don't see this being possible in like the format you can post things today. You used to have so much more creative control, especially if you like owned and managed a site, or I forget what they said near the beginning, but I don't think this was MySpace, but something like MySpace, you had a lot more creative control on over what your site could actually be. So it's again, it's an interesting subject unto itself, and also just sort of an interesting reflection of the internet at its time.
Outlining a strategic path Nick would take in order to pick up the items he needed. Certain 6-letter words beginning with the letter P, such as person, gave Nick feelings of unease, and he would often scratch them out of his school papers. While some members were inclined to suggest traditional help, family intervention, therapy, and medication, others argued this would destroy his creative spark, and what he truly needed was nurturing and direction. Many wanted to reach out to Nick, and some even began emailing him, but they were urged to stop by others as it wasn't known whether such attention would be helpful or hurtful. One user summed up the entirety of the discussion by writing the following: "It's been fascinating watching the mood of this thread go from scorn and ridicule to stark fear and bewilderment, to a cautious empathy, to outright sympathy, and now to righteous guardianship."
Probably that's a like good summary of the situation. And also weird that it would really come to this. I mean, I don't think you'd see this on something like 4chan today, but again, I think also very indicative of how different like the early internet was.
The safest course of action, many agreed, was to simply observe Nick, to interfere as little as possible and see what he did with his creative energy. And over the years, they witnessed Ella Lilia go on to make some of the most unique artistic creations the internet has ever seen.
While you were away, I took note of your walking, and I noticed you have about a 1-inch bounce.
I have a 1-inch bounce?
Yeah, every step you make, your head goes up and down about 1 inch.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Neutral.
It wasn't long after the initial Something Awful thread that Nick's YouTube channel was discovered. Luckily for those who were interested, the channel provided a very thorough
step you make.
Jack and Daxter.
For those who were interested,
Wait,
the YouTube channel
I can see it. Great games.
Discovered. Luckily for those who were interested, the channel provided a very thorough documentation of his day-to-day life, which he lived alongside his parents and sister in the small town of Minot, North Dakota. It included projects he was working on.
If you look closely, you can see the trees here, although they kind of blend in with the Kevrin Mountains fairly well. But to get the best view, up's a daisy.
And how he spent his leisure time.
I'm having fun gathering orbs to the infinite.
One could get a complete picture of Ella Lilia if they were willing to spend the time watching. Although his website had already provided evidence that Nick's imagination and ability to channel his focus could produce some interesting projects, what this website had failed to mention was that in 2000, he'd written a novel.
I'll be at the Twin Cities Book Festival offering my book, The Legend of the 10 Elemental Masters, for sale. $15 per normal copy, $18 per autographed copy.
The story is based on what Nick described on his website as the 10 elements, along with a chart describing how each element either strengthened or weakened the other. His prose, uniquely his own, reflects the way Nick's mind operates, assigning numeric values to nearly every detail, characters given height and weight descriptions to the decimal point, colors represented in hexadecimal format. Ivan is a 14 to 30-year-old 8th grade student who is a sports enthusiast with an above-average muscle mass. He is a 152-pound Native American, 70 inches tall. He wears short white socks, medium-priced, fairly old running shoes, an orange cotton t-shirt, and dark blue-violet elastic silk capris. The capris have holes 1/16 inch in diameter, forming equilateral triangles spaced a 1/4 inch apart. And like many of Nick's creations, reader confusion was unacceptable, and so he'd created visuals to accompany the text.
He went and the amount of detail, like this isn't just like paragraphs of text. You could even see it in the earlier sections of the site. Like it had these very detailed diagrams. He just like, I guess it's a scientific approach of like explaining his thoughts, and it's incredible to see.
But perhaps what caught the majority of attention was that Nick had continued making video games. Years after the release of the Supernatural Olympics, Nick set out to expand his original game to create a fully playable representation of his mind game, which he called Platform Masters. The coding, self-taught as it is, leaves no detail unpolished. As the character moves, Nick's use of parallax scrolling maintains a realistic perspective to the trees in both the foreground and the background. The purpose of the game was to land on the goal platform before the time ran out, with enemies and collectibles along the way, but what made this game unique was the nearly limitless freedoms which the game granted the player, most notably the height in which characters could jump.
Easily see the Earth's curvature going on, and the stars should easily be visible.
With over 300
He programmed all this
levels
too in like during the early 2000s.
Worlds, this game was to be Nick's focus. Unfortunately, Nick's focus was not as singular as one might hope. As evident in many of his uploads, his affinity for spending countless hours playing video games with the sole intent of uncovering bugs and glitches often ate up large amounts of his free time. This addiction was so rampant that Nick's obsession with one video game in particular, Bubsy 3D, a mid-90s PlayStation 1 platformer in which he spent 500 hours in Level 2 alone, was what he began to be known for.
These are some secrets on the second level of Bubsy 3D. I know this game extremely well. Did you know that even this isn't the highest possible place you can stand on in this level?
Years passed, and although Nick continuously posted progress reports on Platform Masters,
Hello,
many
EP.
began to worry that he
How are
may
you
never
doing
release
tonight?
it. Otherwise, Nick seemed to be doing all right.
We're just
Although
sort of
his
having a
personality
YouTube
quirks
video.
were still on full display, he'd managed
500
to find
hours?
workarounds to
That's
some of
not
his
too
more
bad.
harmful
In
lifestyle
Bubsy
habits.
3D,
Using his typical
I'm sure you can get 500 hours out of enjoyment.
Nick shed
Hold on, I missed
using his
this.
typical mathematical. Although his personality quirks were
Doing
still
good?
on full
That's good.
display, he'd managed to find
What is
workarounds
this?
to some of his more
This
harmful
is the
lifestyle habits.
a video
Using
about
his typical-
Eulilia? God. Eulilia? Still probably missing a syllable here. He's like I guess a fair term to use him is a savant who was like a forum poster on Something Awful back in the early 2000s and had just these incredible works of like outsider art detailing like his thought process, and he ended up making a game. He was developing a game too that was really interesting, and it's just sort of going into the background behind him. No, it's Eulilia. Really rolls off the tongue.
Typical mathematical approach to self-improvement, Nick shed 80 pounds of body weight by simply degreasing his pizza, as shown in this tutorial posted to his channel.
Each gram of fat is 9 calories. Each gram of carbohydrates
They
is
did it
4.
all out.
Protein is
What the
also 4. However, one thing to note is that when food is very warm, fat tends to be a liquid, and thus you can use paper towels to soak it up.
By the early 2010s, Ella Lilia had become a full-blown internet celebrity, with many popular forums actively following him. Articles about Ella Lilia were being published on pop culture websites. The Something Awful forums, who'd been keeping up with him all these years, decided to reach out to Nick to see if he'd be willing to do an Ask Me Anything. Now that Nick was an adult in his mid-20s, there wasn't much resistance to the idea, and many had been curious to get a deeper insight into his unusual thought processes. One of the first questions centered around Nick's music preferences. For years, he'd been listening to only a handful of songs, mostly video game soundtracks, but had chosen to make different variations of the songs by increasing and decreasing the beats per minute.
Bugsy games. Great image
He claimed
accompaniment.
this was for variety, so he could get 20 different songs out of one. Someone asked if he had any friends, either online or in his home life. He answered in classic Nick fashion, defining friendship as those who coexist somewhere on the compatibility scale, with 6.25 to 25 being an acquaintance and 100 to 400 being a best friend. He's only had 3 people in his life
quantifying
to ever
everything.
reach best friend status. When asked about the unique name of Ella Lilia, he responded that he'd chosen it because it contains
there's
the
how
word
you pronounce
ill
it.
twice, and he considered himself to be mentally ill. Many just wanted to offer encouragement and to let him know they couldn't wait to play his game when it was released. But as the years continued, a release date for Platform Master seemed as far away as ever. Nick was a perfectionist, constantly improving things about the game, reworking graphics, expanding levels.
Carnivalista's redesign is now complete, and wow, is it way more detailed than it has ever been before.
And being a one-man production team for a technically impressive game with over 300 levels and no budget whatsoever, even an estimated release date seemed like too much to ask. And in 2011, these fears were compounded when tragedy struck Nick, his family, and his hometown of Minot, North Dakota.
This morning, the center of Minot, North Dakota is filling up with water. And over the next week, that city of 41,000 people expects its worst flooding in history.
The flooding of Nick's hometown caused the relocation of over a quarter of the city's population. Streets had to be navigated by boat, the National Guard came to assist with evacuation, and the city's infrastructure, businesses, and private properties saw more than $1 billion in damages. But the timing for Ella Lilia couldn't have been more unusual, as this was when a film crew had traveled from New York in order to make a documentary about his internet celebrity. The film was to be produced by a group of 3 filmmakers who formed the company Everything Works. Over the course of 6 weeks, they followed and interviewed Nick and his family, as well as the citizens of Minot, gathering footage for the film. Early the following year, they released this trailer.
Hi, I'm Nick Smith, aka Alulalia. Welcome to Minot, North Dakota.
Dakota, we have flooding. He doesn't love fireworks. And pizza.
The excitement for this upcoming documentary was substantial, and perhaps the pressure to release something worthy of the attention it had been getting overwhelmed and stalled the team of filmmakers. Time passed with the documentary still in editing limbo and its supporters growing increasingly restless. Finally, in April of 2013, Everything Works producer Trevor Dewin released a statement on his blog explaining the delay. Apparently, they had toured a draft of the film to various unnamed festivals where it was poorly received. With their confidence shaken, the team decided to begin a complete re-edit of the film. Nick would never release his game until it was good enough to meet his high standards and attention to detail, Trevor explained, and I refuse to betray our honor, Nick's legacy, or the audience that has waited anxiously. You deserve a great and interesting documentary about Nick, and you are going to get that. Although many
Fair
understood the
enough.
missteps
They're
of
probably amateur
inexperienced
filmmakers.
filmmakers and
This is
agreed
their
that a
first
delayed film was better than a bad film,
foray.
the lack of updates following this statement left fans of Ella Lilia with waning hope.
Be
Many
curious
attempted
about
to
the
reach
footage,
out
though.
to the filmmakers, even offering to buy the
Yeah,
raw footage
exactly.
in order to edit it themselves. But with over 6 years since the last communication from the filmmakers, coupled with the fact that Everything Works seems to have disbanded, the intimate glimpse into the life of Nick Smith may tragically never surface.
Yeah, we're somewhere near the end. Curious to look it up afterwards, actually, what
Due to
became
Nick's
of
diminished
this.
online
There's been any
presence, his
updates.
internet celebrity has faded in recent years, although he still seems to enjoy interacting with the fans and friends he's made throughout his time in the internet limelight. In September of 2016, a YouTube channel called Alex Yard and Knuckles appeared, featuring interview footage of Nick speaking about his new job, moving out of his hometown of Minot, as well as some classic Nick topics such as his dreams.
My dreams are kind of foretelling the future, such as airline flights. I would have never thought I'd do that back then. Or that I'd go swimming in very clear, very blue water, which is something I'm so wanting to do these days.
He still writes fiction and released his second novel, The Secret in the Basement, in 2015. Although we still haven't seen a finished version of Platform Masters, the video game he's been working on for over a decade, it seems he's still fine-tuning it to his version of perfection, and perhaps one day he'll be ready to release it to the world.
It's because everything's going by at 192 miles an hour. Of course, this isn't the only world with this kind of traffic either.
At 35 years old, it's likely that Nick still has much more to show the world, and although the glimpse into his life he's allowed us to
That's the
see
time of
shows a
recording,
mind
so
fraught
he's
with
38 now.
challenges, it also shows
Most
a
likely,
peculiar,
or going
yet
to be
at
this
times
year.
inspirational individual. From his artistic creations, his analytical and mathematical modes of thinking, his approach to self-improvement, to his methods of overcoming his phobias, Ella Lilia has cemented himself as one of the most fascinating characters the internet has ever seen.
Blue water kills you. Or at least that's what it would have said 21 years ago. I wouldn't have even touched a rain puddle of all things. And yet, here I am, sunk in up to my neck in it. And it's about as blue as it can ever get. How blue? I'll dunk the camera under and show you.
Yeah, she summed it up well. Just a fascinating
Thank you to
figure.
fellow YouTuber Homestar Runnertron.
I want to see a documentary. Has there been any updates on it? Wait. Full unreleased. Is this just the raw footage? Full unreleased director's cut 2012. Yo, they actually came out with it. I want to save this to watch later. I'm definitely curious what this. I only had an hour and 41 minutes. Or actually, this is the director's cut. So this wasn't raw footage either. They actually released it. I guess. Oh, it was later the year after release. She did it in September 2019. Very end of the year 2019. Interesting. Put that and watch later. This technically isn't even my main account. This is where I upload just stream VODs. But whatever. Very cool. I did not realize, yeah, that footage got released. Fascinating individual. I'd love to see what the documentary shows further about his life, his thoughts, and everything. Okay, this next one's a bit shorter, sort of more humorous. I know this was also pretty quiet. Let's try turning this up. Actually, I may even put a gain. Give me 1 second. We have this on 8. Oh, let's Let's try 12.
It had to be said, the Oregon State Highway Division not only had a whale of a problem on its hands,
May still
it
be
had
a little
stinking
quiet. I'm
whale
not sure
of a
how it is for
problem.
you guys.
What to do with one 45-foot, 8-ton whale dead on arrival on the beach near Florence. It had been so long since a whale had washed up in Lane County, nobody could remember how to get rid of one. In selecting its battle plan, the Highway Division decided the carcass couldn't be buried because it might soon be uncovered. It couldn't be cut up and then buried because nobody wanted to cut it up, and it couldn't be burned. So dynamite it was, some 20
Just blow it up.
a half ton of it. The hope was that the long-dead Pacific gray whale would be almost disintegrated by the blast, and that
It's
any
the
small pieces
easiest
still around after
solution,
the explosion
clearly.
would be taken care of
This
by
is America.
seagulls and other scavengers. Indeed, the seagulls had been standing nearby all day. As everything was being made ready, we asked George Thornton, the highway engineer in charge of the project, for his final observation.
Well, I'm confident that it'll work. The only thing is we're not sure just exactly how much explosives it'll take to disintegrate this thing so the scavengers, seagulls, and crabs and whatnot can clean it up.
Is there any chance it might be more than a one-day job?
If there's any large chunks left, and we may have to do some other cleanup, possibly set another charge.
The dynamite was buried primarily on the leeward side of the big mammal, so as most of the remains would
Size
be
of an
blown toward
explosion
the sea.
increases, the
About
number of
75
situations it's
bystanders,
incapable of
most them
solving,
residents
approaches
who had first
zero.
found the whale to be an object
I feel like
of
we used that
curiosity
before.
they tired of
Clearly
its
it's,
smell, were moved back a quarter of a
explosions
mile
are just
away.
that common a
The sand
solution.
dunes there were covered with spectators and landlubber newsmen, shortly to become land blubber newsmen. Where the
Oh
blast
my god,
blasted blubber
that pun.
beyond all
Terrible.
believable bounds.
Oh crap, I also skipped over that. That's like one of the best lines in the video.
Where the blast blasted blubber beyond all believable bounds.
Blasted blubber over all believable bounds. Good for him being able to say that. 3! Okay, you guys ready? You want to get ready. 2, 1. Jesus! Can we get a replay of that? Like, this is a whale. You know how big this is? By God! Oh my God. Video sends me every time.
Our cameras stopped rolling immediately after the blast. The humor of the entire situation suddenly gave way to a run for survival as huge chunks of whale blubber fell everywhere.
Run from the
Pieces of
falling
meat
whale.
passed high over our heads while others were falling at our feet. The dunes were rapidly evacuated as spectators escaped both the falling debris and the overwhelming smell. A parked car over a quarter of a mile from the blast site was the target of one large chunk. The passenger compartment literally smashed. Fortunately, no human was hit as badly as the car. However, everyone on the scene was covered with small particles of dead whale. As for the success of the effort, well, the seagulls who were supposed to clean things up were nowhere in sight, either scared away by the explosion or kept away by the smell.
Oh.
That didn't really matter. The remaining chunks were of such a size that no respectable seagull would attempt to tackle anyway. As darkness began to set in, the highway crews were back on the beach burying the remains, including a large piece of the carcass which never left the blast site. It might be concluded that should a whale ever wash ashore in Lane County again, those in charge will not only remember what to do, they'll certainly remember what not to do.
It didn't even work. Yep. That's an exploding whale for you. Jeez. Love that video. I'm gonna take a quick break to use the washroom. Be right back. For more videos in a moment. They just didn't use enough explosives. Where's that explosion compilation? I just want to like loop this while I'm gone. My God. Yeah, you're right. Probably could have used more explosives. Okay, I'll be back. Oh. Hello, I am back. I love this video so much. Let me quickly reset my model. There we go. Yeah. This part too, the line reading. This is just like peak 70s news reporting. Fucking terrible pun.
Sand dunes there were covered with spectators and landlubber newsmen, shortly to become land blubber newsmen.
And blubber.
Blasted blubber beyond all believable bounds.
Last blasted blubber beyond all believable bounds. Such poeticism. Okay, we're back to more internet-related stuff. This one being, explanation of a Tumblr iceberg. Again, by another, creator I really like, who hasn't put out too much, but, love the videos they have put out, Spaceman Finn. And, we're gonna start partly down the, iceberg chart, basically, at layer 3. I'd still recommend checking out these first 2 layers, but things really start to get wild past layer 3. And it's also kind of a large video, so we're just going to pick off from here.
In 2015, a call-out post, often referred to as Bongazi, was made.
Oh, this is also probably pretty loud. The last video was a little quiet. I'll turn down the gain.
Made by user Pastel Prover, concerning user Little Fucking Monster, named Ender, claiming they were, quote, stealing human bones from cemeteries in Louisiana, which was then backed up by screenshots from user NoPathFollowed of a discussion on a Facebook page named The Queer Witch Collective, where Ender mentioned going to a graveyard, generally assumed to be Holt Cemetery,
straight up
near
grave
their
robbing,
house, and gathering bones that would stick out when it would flood. Further controversy came with the fact that the cemetery was generally used by people who couldn't afford an above-ground grave, as Ender states, as well as that the majority of those buried at the location were people of color living in New Orleans. It was also revealed that the police later raided Ender's home, finding, quote, at least 11 bones and 4 teeth. This situation, as many do, resulted in a variety of responses, especially at its height, ranging from discourse to jokes, though it was accepted by most that you probably should not be digging up random people's bones and using them for your practice.
Probably
if
not.
If you'd like more info on this one, I would recommend the Doublecast video or the Wang video on it. This was an annual Halloween joke where users would talk about the Skeleton War and whatever could fall under it, slowly building up lore. It most likely originated in a 2013 tweet from user Drill, stating, if your grave doesn't say rest in peace on it, you are automatically drafted into the Skeleton War. It was more popular in the mid-2010s, as I don't think I've seen it nearly as much in recent years.
I've never seen this meme, but I was also never really big into the Tumblr scene at all, which made this honestly a lot more fascinating to watch. Even if I couldn't like relate to it personally.
There used to be a popular blog with the URL pizza, and while you can't see the follower accounts of other users on Tumblr, a Sydney Morning Herald article from 2016 claims they had reached 1 million followers by June 2014, the same year that put them on this list. It was also stated in the article that Pizza was receiving thousands in advertising through their blog, and with this newfound money, it seems they were searching for more
1 million
as
followers.
they took up advertising a
Still
diet
10,000.
This turned out to be a scam, and Pizza, along with other popular blogs who had advertised this pill, were deleted overnight.
Okay,
Before
never mind.
deletion, controversy was also held over the fact that Pizza had a tag on their blog containing the N-word, followed by stories, which they alleged to be from when they were 13 years old.
Tumblr is a bit of a fucked up
As
place,
user
as you'll
Stop
learn
Making
from this
Liberals Look
iceberg.
Bad states, Tumblr funnymen are, quote, social justice assholes or anti-SJWs who have gone overboard and revert to a bunch of offensive ignorance with little to no decency. They're never actually funny either. I'm pretty sure I've seen posts with the people they're talking about plenty of times, but completely honestly, I think I was out of the circles that were having this discourse, so we'll just have to go off that. Some people also try to define Tumblr Funny Man as simply someone
my
who just
go-to site for
consistently
weird
makes
stuff.
funny and
It's-
or popular posts, though
It's a
I'm
place
not
for
sure
that.
which definition is the most popular as of this video.
Also, hey baby, how are you doing?
Sixpence was and still is a horror blogger known largely for their multiple controversies.
My God, I remember this.
One of these controversies was with the fact that their family, living in India, has a child slave. They actually admitted to this when asked about it, skipping any sort of apology they could have given, and saying that that's just how things are for wealthier families in India and the Philippines.
It really
They
sucks. I
further
wish our
mentioned how
8-year-old was
if
in
they
school,
had
but that's just
control
what they
over
do here.
anything, they'd prevent it,
Jesus.
and that it really sucks, but at the same time tries to claim that their family does it just because that's the way it is.
Totally justified. God.
Though not a mental health professional, in 2017, Sixpence tried to offer a therapy service called Sixpence Heals, in which they would charge $30
I'm gonna get therapy
to
from the
listen
guy
to
who
people's
owns
problems
child
and
slaves.
give them an individualized and personal report that will really help and guide you. They claim this service to not be a substitution for mental health or medical treatment. However, there are obvious flaws in hearing people's problems, not even knowing them as a person or spending time to work through things, and then acting as an authority while having no training, especially when your followers likely contain a large amount of vulnerable teenagers. In many posts, Sixpence is claimed to have made horror stories and entertainment out of mentally ill and disabled people. If you'd like to look further into specific examples on this, I found a post by user
I'm gonna get
Bronze
therapy from a
Magi
pedo.
that seems
Buy
to
at a
list
nickel.
lot. Another post from
Slightly
the
alarming that
being
it's
able to edit
that
other
common.
people's text era by user Arnilk Breath, which is supposed to look like milk breath, and it actually, I mean, it looks cool. In which the word fuckers was changed to meaners and fudgers, as well as adding
the gifs
I
coming
will
in
kiss
with
the
it.
popsicle, don't tickle me jamboree in their final 4-3 blog, with the user getting progressively angrier.
I don't know. I do find Tumblr humor, like, hilarious sometimes, but, jeez. It can be fucked up.
Best known for being the human pet guy, user
Oh,
the
yeah, this
Cybersmith
guy
is the
too.
author of an
I've
infamous
seen this one
post
on
talking
Reddit
about
beforehand,
human pets,
and
which they claim
Jesus.
should be fine because it doesn't, quote, infringe upon your freedom. The post begins with a scenario 5 to 10 years in the future where the user would bring their human pet into a restaurant, wearing underwear of course, in an attempt to prove how okay it would be. Further, he creates another
Human
more
pet
extreme
guy,
scenario
yup.
about having a, quote, surgically modified pet laid in on a leash. I won't read out all the details on this one because it makes me uncomfortable. Very much so.
I'm not going
But
to either.
I will point out the point where they say, Perhaps I've even humanely removed its eyes, making it less independent. After receiving backlash, the cybersmith claimed it was all just a hypothetical scenario taken out of context.
It's just hypothetical,
Also
guys.
that
Come
the
on.
problem with Tumblr is that if you mention many times your interests in transhumanism, philosophy, politics, history, and human nature, you get few, if any, reblogs/asks about it. But if you mention just once that you want a human pet, people never let it go.
It was just one time, guys. Come
Seem
on.
to have an interest, especially in transhumanism, which, as
What
I
the
can
fuck,
tell,
you gonna remove
is
someone's
the
eyes?
modification of humans technologically. They also seem to think of themselves as a lot smarter than other people or on another level, such as, when you live in shadows, the light hurts your eyes. They would rather live in their ignorance than embrace your illuminating wisdom. Indeed, I must not allow myself to forget that the average person not yet ascended to my level of sophistication. I must be patient with them so that they one day might learn. And seems to try to use a
Condescending.
lot of big words to prove this, which, to clarify, is completely fine on its own. If you're not hurting anyone, then, like, whatever, and talk the way that makes you happy.
Yeah, this was like
Just
among the
don't
top
try to
posts
act
I think on
better than
Reddit.
other
I am very
people.
smart. One can hope dude was just an elaborate troll. I need to tell myself that at least to help sleep at night. Oh, what is great site for weird shit.
This
You
is
got it
one
right there,
I was
baby.
really into at its peak. I didn't read the actual comics, but I saw the designs and I thought it was really neat. I haven't gone back and really looked through it or anything recently to see if the quality holds up, so I don't know. This is just the type of stuff I was into at that point. Anyways, the interwebs was a webcomic on Tumblr starting around 2012 and gaining popularity pretty quickly about the personifications of different websites. It didn't have too much of plot and mostly consisted of the websites interacting with each other. A video made by the creator in 2017,
I feel like
Why
I've
the
seen the
Interweb
comic
series
before,
is over,
but it's sort of a general enough idea. I'm
Why
sure it's
the Interweb
appeared in several
series is
places,
over
or like several
basically
people have
explains
separately had the same
everything from
idea.
start to finish and in a very concise way, so honestly, go watch that to learn more. This originated in a post made by user Cummy Eyelids, or Lana, concerning an amputated toe they received in the post from user Royally Oily, or Haley, to which they stated they would, quote,
Usernames
change
just make
its
it so much
solution,
better.
put it in a new pretty jar, and potentially make it into a wearable pendant, hence the necklace part. A lot of misinformation spread about this post, actually. Things like claiming Haley cut off their toe specifically to make jewelry, or like it being sent in the mail as a threat,
Apparently had
or like
a weird
generally to
fascination,
someone who
obsession
didn't
with
want
like
it,
body
and
parts,
as things seem
stealing
to go on the
bones,
internet, people got very
human toe
loud and
necklaces.
at times upset before knowing the
You
truth.
can see yourself
only
sending
building
someone
on
your
and
own toe.
reinforcing the misinformation. In actuality,
Please, keep your
the toe
toes
was
on you,
removed
baby.
for medical reasons years beforehand, and according to an interview conducted by Insider, Haley feels as though she wants to keep her body parts.
To be honest,
because
I
they
think the
hold
most
an
memorable
energy,
thing I know
and
of
it would be
Tumblr is the
important to her
Internet
to preserve the
Historians
toe
video
and
on the 4chan
potentially
Tumblr
relieve
war.
some guilt of it being removed by wearing it. If you're
I've seen
interested in this aspect of the story,
I think he
I'd
did one
recommend
on
reading more thoroughly through that interview.
oh my god, what was it? The
Also,
Tumblr convention? And that was on one of the earlier layers. It's pretty well known, apart from even like someone not well versed with the Tumblr space. There was one part from layer 2 I wanted to show too, regarding the bird. That again just killed me. 3715. Let me see if I can skip to it.
Outside Tumblr, some people still believed it. With starts easily.
Chocolate bird, here we go. I just want to show this one from one of the
In
earlier
early
layers.
2011, YouTuber and Tumblr user Tyler Oakley posted a GIF of a cockatoo and a chocolate fountain, originally from the 2011 Adam Sandler movie Jack and Jill, created with CGI, as in the bird
CGI.
is not actually in the fountain.
It's not real,
Despite
guys.
This, seemingly completely unaware of the origin, another user proceeded to make a post calling out the original bird post and anyone who enjoys it due to the fact
So
they believe
mad.
it to be genuine animal abuse, seeing as chocolate is toxic to birds and, well, they shouldn't be coated in it. Yet another unknowing user replied, attempting to give a counterpoint that maybe the bird just liked the chocolate, to which the OP replied back in
This is so good.
well, clearly enraged manner, spawning a copy pasta, especially of the first few words past the opening line. Listen here, cum slut. I bet you $5 million that you don't own a bird. But guess what? I own 7. And I can tell you right now that a bird would never just walk into something like a chocolate fountain. They'll rarely walk directly into water. But say that your idiotic theory is correct. Say it did actually walk into it. That animal still probably died. Is that still funny to you? Do you still get your kicks out of knowing that that bird was probably terrified and opening its mouth to scream in that last panel? And if you say yes, then you seriously disgust me as a human being.
Not real, dude. It was CGI. Just the overreaction. Jesus Christ. Oh my god. Listen here, cum slut. Oh, that fucking sends me. Anyways, rudely interrupted the toe necklace story. Let's get back
Feels
there.
as though she wants to keep her body parts because they hold an energy, and it would be important to her to preserve the toe and potentially relieve some guilt of it being removed by wearing it. If you're interested in this aspect of the story, I'd recommend reading more thoroughly through that interview. Also, Lana, the recipient, states that they were actually fine working with body parts, having worked with human teeth in the past alongside some animal parts.
Seems legit.
User Cummy Eyes. Yes, this is the same Lana person as before. Made a post around 2018, from what I can tell, containing pictures of, assumedly them with a skeleton. They state, my baby girl Emily at Queen of the Wild Things got this gorgeous antique partial human skeleton at a flea market for only $30. And continuing
Again,
on
what's
to
Tumblr's
describe the
obsession with
skeleton and ask if
cord,
anyone else
like
can
body
provide
parts?
more information
Jesus.
based on the pictures. According to a comment by user A Human Disaster under a Reddit post pertaining to the story, quote, opinions of people who know about bone stuff is that this is a young, like not an adult, Asian girl. Skeletons used for academic purposes, especially ones that are not disposed of respectfully, were usually obtained via grave robbing, were usually
Let's not do a
obtained
second
via
edit.
grave robbing rather than donation.
Let's go
Though
with it.
Also,
Own it.
others claim there's no way to really tell the origins of the skeleton past being female, and likely is not a child, as some are stating. Some also believe the skeleton could be fake, but the majority believe it to be real, as stated in the original
Your bet is that
post.
they like body stuff because of
This
witch
is
spells
sort
and
of
stuff.
vague,
That was like the first
most
one.
things about this post.
I think she was saying she was
Really
using it as
going
part of
into it any
spells.
Further seems to just be discourse on the general potential ethics of the whole thing.
Maybe it was in the
so
previous layer.
I think
There
I'll
was at least
close
one
out
regarding it.
there.
Hey, happy Pie Day. Thanks, man. How you doing?
Biggest, gaudiest Patronuses,
Investigating the Tumblr
often
iceberg.
shortened to
Or
God,
watching a video
is
explaining
a
it.
popular Tumblr user known particularly for
Tumblr's a
eating
weird place,
crayons
man.
on a live stream for rent money and revealing that they bought alcohol with the money instead, which caused other users to go back through their posts and compile material into a call-out post, particularly one I found in a lengthy
Huge
Google Doc
assignment,
posted
finally
by
free.
user Rodent,
Nice.
including various screenshots accompanying claims of
Hell
things
yeah.
such as attraction to minors, anti-Semitism, doxing a 12-year-old, interacting
God.
with pedophile supporters, lesbophobia, transmisogyny, and
Ramp it
racism.
quick.
I'm not here to make a particular stance, so I would recommend going through the doc and reading a bit further from there
many
if you
pages
would
are
like to
this?
look more into this. Going back to the broken posts, I don't even know what to call it. Rat was famous, or infamous maybe, due to an update around 2018 or 2019, you know. The post and its variants would extend way above their bounds, often obscuring the posts coming before, especially, one can imagine, with many of these posts showing up on your dashboard at once.
Good one coming up, Opa Homeless style. Again, I saw on
Sprang
Red
up as one of
beforehand.
Tumblr's
It killed me.
various April Fool's events, this time for 2015. It was a parody of the 90s Microsoft Office assistant, Clippy, except as a copy machine named Copy, who would pop up and say a bunch of random jokes and stuff. Despite its one-day lifespan, Tumblr users grew attached to Copy, spawning jokes, fan art, and even a t-shirt in the official Tumblr merch store. Which, side note, they had one of those. They had one of those.
Oh yeah, I remember this one too.
So, I can't find it, but I know around 2018, Tumblr had a whole rabies thing. Like, I don't know. It was a big thing that was a lot
just
like
had a thing
more
for
recently
rabies.
when a bunch of people started saying feral, and it sort of ranged from people joking to people being serious about it. But with the added effect of, like, I think there were a couple people who actually tried to get rabies. I don't remember, but I remember, I don't know, I just remember it being, like, a whole thing, but who knows. Anyways, the idea of rabiosexual gained some popularity around the same time in 2018. Most things listed as a parody sexuality, which is the way it originated, and a lot of people seem to react, but like I said, became a serious thing as well. According to blog Rabiosexual Info in a mid-2019 post, rabiosexuality is the attraction to those who are figuratively rabid or wish to be so, the attraction to those with symptoms of being rabid, and or the attraction to those who act rabid. Rabiosexuality is not wanting to get literal rabies or going out trying to get rabies.
Some people ignore that part, apparently.
Rabiosexuality started out as a joke created by a Tumblr user.
Parody died when the internet
it's
was
pretty
invented.
Wild, but simply put, it can be understood if used figuratively. It's the literal attraction to those only who are figuratively rabid.
Or you can't tell if someone's being sarcastic on the internet.
Seems to be not actual rabies, but a more
good example of it.
figurative rabid personality, which is described as having and being attracted to symptoms that could be considered of rabies, such as acting crazy, odd, or unusual from the norm, hissing, sensitivity to light, fear or avoidance of water, mental confusion, and identifying as figuratively rabid. The post ends with, rabiosexuality is not LGBT in the least. We like to consider it something else and by itself. This blog serves the purpose of answering questions and sharing information regarding rabiosexuality.
Is it a parody fetish? Were they actually taking it serious? Like, what? What? Oh,
Opa
here we go.
Style was a screenshotted Tumblr post put up March 2014 onto the r/thathappened subreddit for stories deemed obviously fake.
I don't know if
by
it was
the
a repost
posters,
or I saw this
titled,
original one,
Fedoran
but
villain shames woman for giving to the homeless, in which I did not read the post. It just wrote description. Okay. In which, you know, maybe this
I like
one's
his
worth a
reading of it
read.
too.
Okay. I had a good day of tips waitressing for once, so I gave a homeless man $20 on the walk home. Homeless man. There must be a mistake. No mistake. I can afford to cut back a little. Have a wonderful day. Suddenly, a shrieky little voice rang out. A pasty dude wearing a trench coat and fedora barreled toward me. The fuck are you doing? He yanked the $20 bill from the homeless man's grip, slicing his fingers on the paper. He stuffed the bloody bill in my face.
You ever cut on something like a bill?
You worked for this money while he sat on his ass and jerked
Enough
off.
that you're like
You keep
bleeding
He threw
profusely.
the money in my face. What the fuck is your problem, asshole? Listen to me, you fucking useless female.
Ugh.
I'm from New York City, where the homeless have the decency to
I'm
try
from
and
New
work
York.
for money, whether it's shining your shoes, cleaning your windshield, or just doing a little dance on the street corner. I once saw a man with one leg hop in a circle for hours to make $6 and change. That's the difference between a classy homeless person and a bum. Well, this is my money. I earned it. I'll use it any way I like. How do you get your money if you're so important? I don't need a job because my mom gives me money. A crowd has formed. Everyone was glaring at the scumbag, and a few were even cheering me on.
These
You
fedoras.
wanna dance, you little prick? Everyone turned to see the homeless man rising to his feet.
You wanna
To our
dance?
amazement, he began to perform a pitch-perfect Korean-style dance. Oppa homeless style. The crowd erupted. We all began to join in the dance, save for Dipshit, who turned bright purple. Everyone, up, Oppa homeless style. I threw my $20 at the homeless man's feet. Everyone else followed suit.
And then they
tossing
all
money at
clapped.
him.
Literally.
The woman in the
Literally.
suit gave him her gold watch. Dipshit took off running while the rest of us danced into the night. This is...
Danced away.
Oh,
Lived.
this is just such a good post. Or was I?
Lived happily ever after.
Despite this, the post has yet to be found actually on Tumblr, and with some believing it's even too bad to be real, the suspicion sunk in that the post may just be faked. User
Oh, you don't
Bears
think?
also pointed out that if the screenshot was a reblog, then the way it was tagged would be odd, as many
I guess he's
just
talking about if it
comments
was
or
originally a
don't
post
add
on Tumblr.
tags at all.
I don't think
However, as
think
user
anyone
Heritage Post
believes that
claims an
actually
anon
happened.
stated, a plugin
You'd hope.
frequently used called Missing E actually automatically fills in tags used by the person you are blogged from. I've even seen something like this on my art posts where I'll leave long personal notes in the tag and it'll be auto copy pasted into a reblog, so while it's not wrong, I don't think this point really adds much certainty.
Yeah.
Corroborating with the claims of fakeness, user Heritage Posts further claims the Reddit OP Mechamew2, when asked about the post, stated they found it on 4chan, so it's probably fake.
Sounds like the average history of a Reddit post. Everything on the internet is just passed between one site to the other. Oh yeah. And it's not covered, it hasn't been covered in these layers too much, but there's so many scam projects on Tumblr.
Infamous
Like
Harry Potter
Kickstarters
story
that just
posted
people ran away with
2006
money.
to 2007 onto fanfiction.net by user XXX Bloody Wrists 666XXX. Tara Gilesby centered
Great
around
username.
an original vampire character, Ebony Darkness Dementia Raven Way, and her relationship with character Draco Malfoy, and overall had this 2000s-y gothic sorta emo vibe, if that's a decent way to put it. Many regard this work as, quote, one of the worst works of fanfiction ever written, as it's known for its, quote, constant grammar and spelling errors, plot inconsistencies, and complete disregard for the original Harry Potter source material. And it's thusly debated on whether the fanfiction was actually real or satire, especially due to the fact basically nothing was known about the author besides their alleged name. A near unsolvable mystery, truly. However, for a moment, a light shone in this tunnel in 2017 when one going by the name of Rose Christo sprang up, claiming to be the real, actual author and confirming the work was that of satire, with documents proving such and everything. Christo stated she was a Native American Cree lesbian in the interest of creating a memoir which held the name Under the Same Stars, detailing her search for, quote, her younger brother as a teen after being placed in New York City foster care as a victim of child abuse and child pornography, which seems to be the reason held for writing the story in the first place, for which she provided enough proof, as it seems, to Macmillan publishers to believe and take her up on this.
Really into Harry Potter, and they remember when My Immortal came out.
The memoir was pulled from the Macmillan release list as Christo confessed to
Damn.
the forging of documents, though, as she claims, only to protect her family. This occurred likely because of a Kiwi Farms user claiming to be her
I don't know if I've
brother,
ever heard of it
stated
myself before
Rose
this.
Christo was actually Teresa,
those
who
names sound
was
amazing,
white
though.
and had never actually been in foster care. It was really just for attention for her novel. This user was never fully confirmed to my knowledge, but proved believable enough as it seems to cause doubt in people. Really, it's all just unsubstantiated he said, she said, you know. While there isn't no chance Teresa could have written My Immortal and was just lying about other aspects, it's all so unsure it's really just back at square one.
Not that interested in the drama itself around it. I'm curious about the story itself. What was... No, this was mostly about backstory to it. What was that name?
Abuse and child being lesbian, such an author by the name Moment. Nothing was known.
XXX Bloody Wrist 666. Amazing. And here it is. Ebony, Darkness, Dementia, Ravenway. Again, like, you think most people would just instantly assume, you know, it's satirical, it's supposed to be a parody, but parody died when the internet was invented. Internet historian did a series of reading of My Immortal? I think I recall about hearing that from him. I need to watch more of his videos. I've definitely seen the Tumblr convention one. I think he did one on a furry convention. Oh, there's another good one. It's definitely been a while. I need to do a deeper dive into his videography.
Quote, her younger brother child abuse story in the first
I
place.
wanted to hear more about My Immortal too, so I'll definitely look into that.
As she claimed, user claiming to be white and had never actually been in foster.
Okay, where did we leave off? Oh yes,
Apparently,
Lemon Demon.
This one was just generally the fact that he's done so many different popular things that people don't really connect the dots on, which really broadens my horizon on this one, but I assure you this would become a Neil Ciceriga video if I truly allowed myself that, so I will try and keep it short. So basically, Neil, also known by Lemon Demon, while being an active Tumblr user, well, more active in the mid-2010s, I guess.
That comic by him.
Making some popular
Ariel
posts,
needs legs.
You may also recognize him for Lemon Demon albums such as Spirit Phone, View Monster, and Dinosaurchestra, The Ultimate Showdown of Ultimate Destiny.
Oh yeah, and he did that.
Brody Quest, Harry Potter Puppet Pals, and the comic Ariel Needs Legs. I would
He did
also
so
like
much,
to highlight
jeez.
the first post on his blog from June 20th, 2009.
The belated Pi Day.
Not because it's his most
Oh yeah, it's just over
significant,
midnight here.
but because it's important to me personally, which is titled, Welcome to Neil's Sex Blog. Thank you.
Yo, 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 homies. This here's Neil, and I'm gonna give you all the 411 on sex. Sex is the reproductive act, yo, between a man and a woman. Penis goes into the vagina, and that's the way it happens. If you don't believe me, get a clue. This has been Neil's Sex Blog. Peace out.
Neil's Sex Blog. Thank you.
Excellent. Really like Lemon Demon's music? Yeah,
Around
I've listened
2012, a
to
new
a few
feature-
things here and there. Honestly, I think originally it just popped up on my recommendations at a time, but I've heard about Neil Sigri, whatever he was called from before. I didn't realize he did all those things, though. I knew about the Ariel Needs Legs. I didn't know about Puppet Pals. I forgot about the Ultimate Showdown, but I think that was, like, how I was originally learned about him. Cool guy.
Launched on Tumblr, in which you could pay $5 to pin a post to your followers' dashboards for 24 hours, which they could hide by clicking a red pushpin. This was assumedly an attempt similar to promoted posts on other social media platforms, but it seems it died out with people either being afraid spammers would abuse it, or just thinking it's a waste of money. Especially since I
like an
can't
internet
really
classic.
find people talking about it past the initial launch. Nowadays, you can pin posts to your blog and without any cost. This was basically a post about this shy boy and like this other outgoing guy, and they're in love, and people kept adding onto it in a bunch of different art styles. It goes for a while. I don't think I've seen a lot of these editions before, but I definitely know the original after seeing it. Also, it wasn't actually about a bully, but with the way it goes, I totally get how they could have remembered it that way.
Roundup Fresh, Kit Kat Official. What was this
Woody's
one?
Roundup was basically a collection of people who would take old URLs from people like Nazis, TERFs, and pedophiles and turn them into roleplay blogs for Woody from Toy Story, all with the same icon.
Oh, I remember
saying
this
things
now.
like, "Howdy, partner." The person who started this was user
Howdy,
Snooping As
partner.
Usual, I see, who also held 2 brand parody blogs, Aquafresh and Kit Kat Official. Both of these accounts, however, ended up getting taken down for impersonation. Notably enough, though, many at first thought Aquafresh was taken down under hate speech for posting Infinity War spoilers, but this ended up not being the case.
Hold on, what was that message?
Ended up not.
Hashtag Infinity Stones you'll need in the gauntlet of hashtag sugar acid protection are healthy gums, strong teeth, and fresh breath. See you on the other side, Thanos. Yeah, that'd be grounds deletion. Spoiling Infinity War.
Brandom was the brand fandom phenomenon, in which people would roleplay as brands. This originated from previously
Like the
mentioned
most
user Kit Kat
Tumblr
Official.
thing I've ever heard. Oh, we're getting deep now. Playing D&D? I have not before.
Wayne
A lot of
Radio
people in my
TV
work are
made
big into it, though.
Half-Life VR, but the AI is self-aware, or HLVR AI, a like Half-Life improv machinima sort of thing, streamed on Twitch, with the first part having nearly 4 million views on YouTube. I've seen a good bit of fan art for it, I'm pretty sure, actually, so while I don't have personal experience with this, I can imagine it's pretty popular. By the Iceberg OP Minecraft Jukebox, quote, Wayne Radio TV was included since Wayne and his friends made HLVR AI, parentheses, wildly popular, as well as various other viral Tumblr posts, to the point where it's rather funny to learn that they made them.
Love D&D, just wish I could be a player instead of a forever DM. But you hold all the power.
So,
oh, the 5th
basically,
edition of D&D.
HIV Living was a Tumblr blog for HIV awareness ran by a white college student in the US pretending to be a couple consisting of Isra, a 19-year-old Chinese-Pakistani non-binary bisexual living in India with HIV for 3-ish years, and Naj, an 18-year-old cis lesbian of color born in the US but also living in India, in order to justify their 170,000-word-long Hamilton fanfiction in which Alexander Hamilton is a high school student in the 1980s with HIV. That's the general idea of it. Oh, Also, the user who found the info and called them out allegedly wrote a quote, Lin-Manuel Miranda / Anthony Ramos RPF, or Real People Fiction, fic, where Lin was a cannibal mermaid. It featured romance and murder, but no vor, to AO3, or Archive of Our Own.
What? That was a lot of words. That was...
which user communism kills due to a lot of drama and shit takes that I do not want to dig that deep into here, made a post announcing a Patreon in which you could, quote, buy their silence for a certain amount of money. Meaning if you gave them money, they just wouldn't post for however long. This is the
$1,000 a
origin
month.
of the popular
I will stop.
Buy My Silence.
Yeah, I've seen this before.
For $8,000 a month, I will stop.
Getting a Patreon to shut him up. Genius idea.
Okay, so pretty much, Kong Pao Penis was started as an edited political cartoon with Bernie Sanders saying the phrase, posted by user Snooping As Usual I See. This evolved into where a lot of people would actually know the phrase from, with the user commenting it on a post by user Trilizard, or Trillizard, infamous for trying to act smarter than other people, and generally just having absolute acts.
What did he have to do in relation to this? Sorry, I zoned out near the beginning.
Kong Pao Penis was started as an edited political cartoon with Bernie Sanders saying the phrase, posted by user Snooping As Usual I See. This evolved into where a lot of people would actually know the phrase from,
originally posted
with the user commenting it on a post by user Trilizard, or Trillizard, infamous for trying to act smarter than other people, and generally just having absolute shit takes, saying that, quote, all y'all treat straight men on this website like incels treat women. This Kong Pao Penis reply seemed to get him really upset, and so more and more people would comment it. In which a Homestuck cosplayer filled a hotel bathtub with a mixture of 70% alcohol plus black and gray Sharpies, assumedly in an attempt to dye their skin gray like the character they were going to cosplay, Terezi. According to a post by user Phantom Shadow, after 2 hours of waiting, their roommates finally opened the bathroom door to find the scene, to which they kicked the person out and made them pay the $700 damage fees, and as a result of the Sharpie alcohol mixture they also received, as the post states, skin poisoning / damage.
Just soaking a bathtub full of Sharpie ink. What could go wrong? And 17% alcohol.
Among the decently large otherkin community of Tumblr,
Played any tabletop war games? Like Age of Sigmar or Kings of War? Try to get it set up in
They are known particularly
Tabletop Simulator. Ran into some problems regarding it, so never was able to get the game off the ground.
Reminder that keeping plants in your house without their permission is slavery and kidnapping.
Again, another good example. Parody is dead. Proven by Tumblr.
Permission is slavery and kidnapping.
Only in Tumblr would people argue for houseplant
From what I can tell,
rights.
user Omega Otaku is known for basically harassing a bunch of people with threats,
freedom,
insults, guilt tripping, and a lot of repeated points about like Zionism and something about Trashy Tasha from the Total Drama fandom, as well as for being an alleged predator, which seems to originate in a post made by user Angie the Witch. The OP of the Iceberg, Minecraft Jukebox, states, apparently some racist shit was done by this user. Their blog still exists, but a friend recommended they be included due to infamy. Not super familiar with this user otherwise. I cannot seem to find info confirming that part. However, if you're interested, I'd recommend starting from the aforementioned Angie the Witch post.
Oh, I remember this one too. I think I saw this one on Reddit as well.
This user is actually named Joey under the username whateverchild. However, I
This
believe
was
the
good.
OP got Jake from the fact that what got them popular in April 2013 was a cosplay of Jake English from Homestuck people felt was especially accurate to the character. This newfound popularity,
I
however,
play Warhammer
transferred
40k
into
on
an
Tabletop
ego,
Sim.
as
One of the
Jake
guys I was playing with flipped the table when he lost his first model. That doesn't seem very far into the game. Like, doesn't some like army layouts come with like tens of models? First model seems a little extreme.
would gatekeep what people ought to cosplay, believing one should only cosplay characters that match their physical appearance, whether it be body type, gender, race, anything along those lines. Obviously, people did not like that, and it eventually escalated into a post, which became a copy pasta, reading, "I'm sorry, you must not know who I am. I'm Joey, the cosplay elitist, and I don't have time for talk of cosplay that isn't canon. I cosplay hard, I cosplay with passion, and I cosplay correctly. This is a passion. This is a talent, and this is something I do not have shitheads suggest for me to,
cosplay
hey
with
dude,
passion.
do this, casually, with no reasoning behind it."
Let's see post.
In which a post stated, "It's fun to stay at the," and 4 users individually replied YMCA in reference to the popular Village People song. However, the blog connected to the letter C was apparently a gay porn blog, and so had a sort of perceived shock value, causing a user to simply say, "Don't click C," to which people obviously would want to click on it more, whether this was the intention or not. Tumblr sexy men are largely agreed upon as characters who had a big following of people
Guard,
who
I'm used
found
to
them
losing a dozen
sexy,
models in a patrol
though
game.
didn't seem to follow
They
some
can range from a
usual
single
taste
model per
or
unit to
standard
tens of
ideas
models
what
per
makes
unit.
a character
Yeah,
attractive.
I know you can have like
Often,
big ass
people
units
would
too,
use
which are like
headcanons being their
300
own ideas
points
the
out of the 1,000 you get, or
humanization of non-human characters,
depending
in
on
order to
like
make
what type
them
of
more
mode
attractive.
of
Some aspects
game
of
you're
the
playing, I
definition
guess.
are sort of
How big an army
loose
you can
and
have.
debated, as many say only white, skinny, and cis human characters are preferred, but basically they're
Oh, yes,
characters
the
people
Tumblr
obsess
sexy
over
man.
that a lot of people agree is questionable. Though right now I'm not going to go into whether each one is or not. Primary examples of these include the Onceler, believed to be the original Tumblr sexy man, Bill Cipher, and Sans Undertale. To some extent, I'd also throw Nagito Kamita in there. These are ones I'd figure a majority of
That
Tumblr
guy,
users are at least aware of.
Agnarampa
However,
character, right?
those are not the
Yeah,
only
the guy with the white
majority
hair
of
there.
Tumblr users are at least in there. These
Who
are
was
ones
that?
I'd figure a majority of Tumblr users are at least
Yeah, Nagito
aware of.
Kamieda.
However, those are not the only examples, as a Google Doc called the Sexypedia, created by user Sickly White Dudes, offers a, hopefully exhaustive list of Tumblr sexy men, including
Christ.
characters such as Reagan Arataka, Black Hat, Darkiplier, Eggman, Eraserhead, Herobrine, Jack Skellington, JFK
Yes,
Clone
Herobrine,
High,
the
Junkrat,
classic sexy
Professor
character.
Membrane, Murdoch Nichols, Purple Guy, Rick Sanchez, Robbie Rotten, Roger Kefley, Sideshow Bob, Slenderman, Waluigi, The Warden, Wheatley, Professor Venomous, and Victor Corpse Bride.
Story short, Tumblr was hella horny.
The doc goes more in depth and provides some proto-sexy men, such as Loki, Snape, and the 10th Doctor, as well as the Kamita archetype checklist. Though already mentioned, I'd argue Wheatley is nearly also a proto-sexy man, as although he wasn't quite as popular as the Onceler, he received basically the same
last thing in the
treatment
video?
and a bit
Yeah.
earlier, almost
What
bridging
do I
the gap
have?
between the proto-sexy
Oh
men
yes,
and the
this
current
video.
sexy men.
I definitely want to show this next.
Anyways, With that being said, the Tumblr Sexy Man dating sim seems to be a project Minecraft Jukebox was involved in personally. With the Tumblr Sexy Man popularity hitting a high level in early 2020, a Discord server was created. Within the server, 15 to 30 of the 250 or so total users got involved in the making of a dating sim concerning these characters, though it fell off and never got finished. A sample of the game was uploaded to YouTube showing the title screen and early gameplay, though that seems to be as far as it goes.
Go. As the Tumblr iceberg.
Thank you. I believe that's all. If I missed anything, or if you know other Tumblr things that weren't mentioned here, feel free to comment it. I was actually planning to do another
Really liked
video
Dating Around
as
when I was a young teen. I like murder mysteries, and other people love the characters. Yeah, I've heard a lot of good things about it.
Were significant enough, but not in this chart.
I don't know.
Thanks
the Game
again.
Grumps
Please
playthrough of
have
it's
a
supposed to
nice
be pretty
day.
funny. I'll probably check that out if I were to look into the series. But I'm sure the games themselves are fun to play. I don't know. I'm not a big fan of the visual novel style of gameplay. I think I'd rather just watch a Let's Play if I ever were to look into it. It's starting to get late. Oh, I never did check out Dawn's video, or Dawn's video, Dawn the Birthplace. He originally showed up during our first YouTube stream when we were doing analog horror and asked if we could check out his own, and very recently he's remade that. And apparently won an award in the Discord and like official analog horror Discord server, so kind of interested in checking that out. Be a bit of a change in pace, but let's give that a shot. Man, I may save these last few videos for next stream because it is getting late. Let's check this out. Report identified life form adulteration initiation. Evolution successful, injection test. All back in 88 apparently? March of 88. Serum trials, 3 doses failed. Redilution. For Leslie's funeral. They did another round of trials. 1A was rejected, 1B was rejected, 1C was rejected. This was 1D and E. And F. Not seeing a whole lot of success here, team. Tap, 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 tap. Also rejected. Damn it. Rival Media Division, new arrivals. Microtrauma Recovery first airing. Evo Logo 7. Missing persons, deceased persons, anomaly threats. All previous and new archive media are secured and organized, although certain pieces of media have been discarded. For mayhem. 23-6A has not been yet executed. To director. What? Oh, I remember seeing someone commented about the QR code. Scanned the QR code and translated this. Listen, I don't have the sanity to work here anymore. If you need to kill me, that's fine. It's not like I was living much of a life working here in the first place. Fuck you. What caused such a reaction?
Adulteration process has been going somewhat according to plan. I mean, it has been according to plan. Dilution of the VL has been risky, but in the end we got our results. We tested the first version of the serum on the subject who sent us. About 7 seconds after injection, subject
Bring this
started
up a
darting
bit.
his eyes across the room, almost as if he was seeing things that weren't there. The next 9 to 10 seconds, subject started to wait until gray matter started to leak out of his neck.
Getting like 90% of this.
Directors, please.
Plus for 3 hours without changing. Tape is full, take it out and replace it with a blank tape on the desk to your right. There was some radioactivity involved in this test. Interesting.
Progress report on the ether cell. Construction has been progressing.
There's subtitles to this. Okay, this will definitely help a lot.
Steadily, various changes have been made to balance power and efficiency, but we have the final model of Mark 1 as of March 1st, 1988. There is a lot of new capabilities with this model. Power flow is consistent, and the 10-inch modified tempered glass is strong enough to prevent anomaly breaching. There are of course some flaws, but that's only because we are limited by the technology of our time. As time goes on, the ether cell will get more advanced, thus benefiting our experiments. If you think any changes should be done, let us know in facility B.
I was talking about it in his previous videos, but definitely getting some big like SCP vibes from this style of videos. All the redacted information and tapes and whatnot.
On origin? Not at the moment. What could it add? Listen, you are new here, so I'm going to allow questions. Wait. Fucking space is opening. Send Thoro.
Welcome. Here at Sentient Tech, we've provided this program to help you recover from any traumatic event you have experienced here. Some anomalies have strange effects that, even though they may be small gestures, they can be very traumatizing. We have called this type of trauma microtrauma. If you have been diagnosed with microtrauma, we have provided images that can help reverse the damage.
They show them cute cats videos to deal with their trauma from seeing these horrible otherworldly creatures. Oh, apparently we get to see the images. That's feeling less traumatized already. Great. So this is also episode 1, fueling the demons that taunt them in their nightmares. They were experimenting, was a previous message I missed. You can stop this. You won't. You know the consequences that come with working here. Take my word now, and you can stop this. Save them. Or who these tapes were from. I am warning you.
I regret to inform you, but, unfortunately, we can't continue the ULA experiments because, well, the serum. The serum. You see, the serum works, but the amount of times that it didn't work cost us. I don't even know how to explain it. I would have gotten Theo to do this, but he is still in his office. He did provide his notebook that described the problem. I guess he can't come to terms with the facts. That's probably why he's still crying. Well, the D1 variant of the serum is what caused this mess. After injection, the usual started to happen. Subjects would go through extreme amounts of pain before, well, dying. So we thought, when the cleanup team arrived to retrieve the body. When Dr. Charles saw the body upon first glance, he said the body looked dead, but was still breathing. And then, on further inspection, noticed the growth that was apparent on the side of the subject's neck. When we got a hold of the body, we ran some tests and came to the conclusion that it was going through some type of metamorphosis. We started to check its radiation levels to see if anything else was abnormal. That's when we detected that the same radiation that had been emitting from the UL was emitting from the body. We assumed that the UL had somehow laid an egg inside the subject, or worse, had replicated itself inside.
Oh shit. Dan, A through G just aren't working, aren't cutting it. What about each of these experiments are done on? Same person? They take a new one every time? Accept it.
I just can't stand it here. Sure, it pays well, but it's not with my sanity. It's like they make you feel in control by saying, hey, you're in charge of this. And we're left to think that we're on top of the situation even though we aren't. And that's how they want it. I'm so done with this. I'm not even supposed to be talking to you about this. Last week, the fucking face opened. You hear me? The fucking face opened. Just leave. Leave while you still can. There are things I will never be able to unsee.
His kitchen. It was flashed in the middle of the previous, like, picture compilation. A pretty normal kitchen to me. Who's instructing the person to do this? Is it the creature itself? Or whatever the experiment is? Oh. Damn. I'm left pretty intrigued. There was... I missed a bit of the dialogue, I think, during the first bit. I want to play this back, actually see a full transcript of it. I didn't realize the subtitles were there.
The unidentified life form adulteration process has been going somewhat according to plan. I mean, it has been according to plan. Dilution of the UL has been
better than somewhat,
but in the end we got our results. We tested the first version of the serum on the subject who sent us. About 7 seconds after injection, subject started darting his eyes across the room, almost as if he was seeing things that weren't there. The next 9 to 10 seconds, subject started to wait until gray matter started to leak out of his neck near the injection site.
This is the one that was brought on to the doctor before. They thought maybe it was an egg or... it cloning itself.
model, power flow is consistent, and efficiency.
Let's rewatch this too.
Progress report on the ether cell. Construction has been progressing steadily. Various changes have been made to balance power and efficiency, but we have the final model of Mark 1 as of March 1st, 1988. There is a lot of new capabilities with this model. Power flow is consistent, and the 10-inch modified tempered glass is strong enough to prevent anomaly breaching. There are of course some flaws, but that's only because we are limited by the technology of our time. As time goes on, the ether cell will get more advanced, thus benefiting our experiments. If you think any changes should be done, let us know in facility B.
This is all out of order too, because that one was talking about March 1st. We go back in time here. What was the original time frames in the beginning of the video? Yeah, they were just shortly after March 1st. When they started experimenting with the injections. Because this was 547 B23 serum trials. Near the end, what were these listings? Oh, this was the repeat of that, and then week 2 was when it finally succeeded. On April 3rd. Which I'm assuming is when what she described happened.
Going through some type of metamorphosis. We started to check its radiation levels to see if anything else was abnormal. That's when we detected that the same radiation that had been emitting from the UL was emitting from the body. We assumed that the UL had somehow laid an egg inside the subject, or worse, had replicated itself inside.
So good. Damn, this was awesome. They did like so much world building in just this one video. I love the feeling of like found footage, it being out of order. Like, I don't know, I had to rewatch to like piece things together, sort of get a overall chronological timeline of events. I'm definitely very intrigued. This is only episode 1. See where they're going from there, but this is holding a lot of promise. Really looking forward to seeing more. If you watch this later, Birthplace. Oh yeah, this is my VOD account. Cool. Probably gonna wrap it up here for the night though. I've got a few more videos, you know, there's gonna be more YouTube nights in the future. I want to check out more Birthplace's videos, and I don't know, I'll definitely come across some more videos on top of that to watch at a later date. Anyways, thanks for tuning in, everyone. Hope you enjoyed. Yeah, just going through some videos I liked. I don't know. I do try to be a variety streamer, mixed up from games every now and then. And I don't know. I love sharing smaller content creators. Otherwise, just even larger ones I do enjoy. And yeah, sort of open to share that around. I don't know. Great stream tonight. Hope you have a good one. Night. Have a good one. Yeah, same with you guys. I'll probably be back again Wednesday, checking out a new game, Tunic, that's gonna come out then. I've been looking forward to for a while. I haven't played a Zelda like since Death's Door, so I think that's gonna be pretty fun. But until then, everyone, have a good night, and bye for now. Oh, where's my playlist? Here. Oh, that was a little loud. Have a good night, everyone.